Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere you've definitely heard about but probably wouldn't want to stay in as in medieval Europe. Specifically, you're going to experience what it was like to be a child. Spoiler, you probably won't survive this. I mean, odds are genuinely stacked against you from your first gasping breath. No vaccines, no dental floss, no internet, and definitely no juice boxes. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, what time is it where you are, and what city are you watching from? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It's early morning and the chill creeps under the wooden door of a smoke-darkened cottage. You're being born into a world that doesn't exactly roll out the red carpet. If your mother's lucky, there's a midwife nearby, though midwife is a generous term for the neighbour who's delivered a few babies and probably believes that garlic hung around the bed keeps evil spirits away. The room smells like old straw, burning peat, and the occasional waft of manure drifting in through the windowless gaps in the wall. The bed isn't really a bed. It's a sack of hay that squeaks when your mother shifts her weight, and the only source of light is a flickering fire that's been dying for hours. That fire's important. It chokes the air but also fights off the cold. People keep it going all day, every day, especially in winter. But you, newborn you, are slick with blood and barely able to make noise louder than a whimper. The women mutter prayers in a mix of Latin and local dialects. They rub salt on your skin, yes, actual salt, as if you're a ham about to be preserved. It's supposed to toughen you up and protect you. You hate it, of course. You're screaming already, which is a promising sign. Some babies don't even make it that far. And just in case you thought you'd be cleaned up and handed a fluffy towel, nope. You're probably being wiped down with a piece of linen that's been reused for more births than anyone can count. Sterility is not even a concept here. People don't really connect dirty tools or hands with illness. So if you catch something during birth, it's chalked up to fate, or maybe a punishment from God. Medieval people really love a good divine explanation for random tragedy. You'd think people would be joyful about a new baby, but honestly, they're cautiously optimistic at best. The first few days of your life are a waiting game. Everyone's watching to see if you breathe properly, nurse well, and, don't die. You're not even named right away. In fact, your family might wait several days, or even until you're baptised, to officially give you a name. Because naming a child who won't survive the week, that's just bad luck. The infant mortality rate is brutal. 1 in 3 babies doesn't make it to their first birthday. Half of children won't survive to adulthood. Nobody celebrates a birth with cake and balloons. They just whisper hopeful things and try not to look too attached. And if you were hoping for some soft, loving lullabies, well, you might get those, but they're probably sung while someone is also weaving or stirring a pot. Life doesn't stop for your arrival. Your mother may have to get back to work within hours or days. She might strap you to her chest while tending the fire or gathering herbs in the woods. Infant care, there's no parental leave here. If your mother doesn't work, you don't eat. It's that simple. One thing that might surprise you is the communal aspect of child rearing. You're not just raised by your parents, you're passed around the village like a potato in a stew. Older siblings, neighbours, even the occasional monk might take turns rocking you or changing your swaddle. Speaking of which, swaddling. It's not the cute wrap your baby like a burrito situation you see on Instagram today. No, you're bundled head to toe in long strips of cloth that keep your limbs totally immobilised. You're basically a medieval mummy. This goes on for months. People believe it helps your bones grow straight and keeps you safe from falls or accidents. But mostly it keeps you from flailing around and being a general nuisance while adults are trying to do real work. You're not even supposed to move on your own. If you wriggle too much, someone tightens the wraps. If you cry too much, you get hung on a nail. Okay, that sounds terrible, but it's true. Mothers sometimes suspend swaddled babies from hooks on the wall or a beam to keep them off the dirty floor and away from rats or fire. You're just dangling there like a medieval purse with lungs. Cosy. The fringe fact here? Some medieval parents believed that changelings, fairy imposters, might swap places with their real baby. If you cried too much, looked sickly, or just didn't feel right, people might worry that the fairies had taken you and left behind something else. There were rituals, some mild, some horrifying, to try to force the fairies to return the real child. These could involve leaving the baby out overnight or placing them near fire. Again, child protection laws? Not a thing yet. Historians still debate the emotional bonds of medieval families. Some argue that high infant mortality made parents emotionally distant or pragmatic. Others say people absolutely grieved and cherished their children, even if life forced them to act otherwise. There's no real consensus. Diaries and records are scarce. And so much of the emotional world back then is buried under centuries of smoke and silence. But right now, none of that matters to you. You're hungry, half-blind, and confused by literally everything. The sound of animals outside, the bleating of goats, the clucking of chickens, the occasional bark is already part of your life. You'll hear it every day for as long as you live, which could be a while, or could be not at all. Welcome to childhood in the Middle Ages. You've survived a few days. Miraculous, really. The local midwife nods like you've passed a test, and now comes your official entrance into both your family and the church. Baptism. You're probably still swaddled, stiff as a board, when they carry you to the village church, which is really just a single cold room made of stone, dirt, and some extremely dusty hope. There's no stained glass, maybe just some small uneven windows barely letting in the light. The floor is packed dirt, damp from decades of tears and spilled candle wax. It smells like incense, mould, and 1,000 unwashed tunics. Charming. The priest is not particularly warm. He's an old man who mutters in Latin and stares at your tiny squirming body like he's unsure whether to be impressed or annoyed. He's seen too many of you come and go. He dips his fingers into a bowl of water that might have come from a river, a bucket, or the last rainfall. There's no way to know. What matters is that it's cold, shockingly skin-pricklingly cold, and it's about to be dumped over your head. You don't like this. The water hits your scalp and slides down into your ears, and now you're crying again, loud and frantic, but that's okay. That's actually a good sign. Crying means you're alive, and if you're crying during baptism, the villagers watching in silence might finally exhale. It's believed this ritual protects your soul from eternal damnation, so even if your physical body doesn't stick around long, at least you're covered spiritually. Priorities. There's a godparent or two standing there, maybe a cousin or neighbour who barely knows your name, but who's agreed to step in if something happens to your parents. Given the life expectancy and random plagues floating around like invisible assassins, that's a real possibility. After the priest mumbles some Latin, traces a cross on your forehead, and gives a final splash of holy water, you are, at last, a proper Christian child. Ta-da. Now you get a name. Not a fun one though, probably something like Agnes or Bartholomew. Or, if your parents are feeling really devout, a saint's name like Sebastian or Claire. No room for experimentation, no Luna or Kai or XE812. You're a medieval baby. You get a solid biblical name and you wear it like a helmet for the rest of your life. Fun fringe fact. Some names were chosen specifically to confuse demons or honour someone who died in a recent plague wave. There's a good chance you're named after an older sibling who didn't make it. So yeah, carry that weight. You return home, baptised and bundled. It's still cold, it's always cold, there's no insulation in your home, just thatch, clay, and the desperate hope that the fire stays lit. Your parents hang herbs over your sleeping spot, again probably to ward off spirits or illnesses, a mix of superstition and early folk medicine. People don't understand bacteria, but they do believe in evil air. Miasma, they call it. Bad smells mean bad health, hence the bundles of dried lavender, thyme, or mint hanging from the ceiling beams, swaying gently in the smoky air like a medieval mobile. You're fed when you cry, assuming your mother can nurse you. If not, there might be a wet nurse, another woman from the village paid in food or cloth to let you latch on. If that's not available, you're on to goat's milk or watered-down beer. Yes, beer. Weak ale is often cleaner than the local water. Nobody's giving you a sippy cup of apple juice. You're getting medieval hydration, one way or another. Doctors at the time believe beer is warm and nourishing. They also think you can balance your bodily humours with diet, which is adorable in a tragic sort of way. There's no such thing as sterile feeding bottles. If you can't drink from a breast or a cup, they might fashion a makeshift teat from animal hide or cloth. You're chewing on leather soaked in barley mush, and that's your breakfast. Nutritionally questionable, deliciously chewy, and likely crawling with bacteria. But hey, your body's already building up resistance. Either that or you'll have a fever by tomorrow morning. Now, about your new digs. You don't get your own room or crib. You probably sleep in the same bed as your parents or siblings, if you're lucky. Sometimes you're just on the floor, bundled near the hearth, hoping a spark doesn't land on your face. There are no diapers. Instead, cloth wrappings are changed when they're soaked through. And if you wet yourself, well, That's just the smell of the house now, one of the weirder fringe beliefs in your world. Some parents genuinely think sneezing is a good sign because it proves your soul hasn't escaped your body yet. If you don't sneeze or cry for a while, someone might start panicking and burn rosemary near your head. That's medicine, that's logic, that's medieval parenting. And the scholars? They argue endlessly about how much medieval people actually cared about infants. Some say children were considered adults in training and weren't given much emotional attention. Others argue that, despite the hardships, parents did form deep emotional bonds and grieved their losses intensely. But good luck proving that. Most medieval people didn't leave behind detailed journals about their feelings. A broken bit of pottery or a baptismal record is the best anyone gets. Interpret as you will. What's certain is that your survival is a round-the-clock project. Your parents don't sleep deeply. They're always half awake, listening for your cries, checking your breath, adjusting your swaddle, praying to a whole stack of saints. There's a quiet tension in the air, a sense that death could stop by at any moment. It often does. Infant mortality isn't a distant statistic, it's a household reality. But for now, you're alive. A squealing, milk-smelling, tightly wrapped bundle of potential. You've got a name, a soul officially, and a place in the hut. You're part of a world that will expect a lot of you very soon. But right now, it's enough just to exist. Every breath, every sneeze, every gurgle is a tiny miracle. Your days blur together in a haze of darkness, smoke, and the constant itch of wool. You're swaddled up so tightly your limbs are basically furniture now, stiff and unmoving, like little peasant arms made of breadsticks. The swaddling goes on for months, no exaggeration. You are rolled, wrapped, tucked, and sometimes double layered, depending on how cold it is. Freedom of movement is not the vibe. You can't scratch, stretch, or even suck your thumb unless someone loosens the wrapping just enough to let one hand peek out like a trapped ghost. It's not that your parents are trying to be cruel. They genuinely believe that keeping your body straight and rigid will help your bones grow the right way. It's orthopedic parenting, medieval style. But you wouldn't know that. You just lie there like a little human burrito, staring up at the rafters and listening to the chickens pecking under the floorboards. Oh yes, there are chickens under the floorboards. Possibly a pig too. Most families keep their animals indoors during the colder months, both to prevent theft and because pigs give off a surprising amount of heat. So you're swaddled in cloth, buried under a sheepskin, and surrounded by the aroma of pig breath and burning peat. Home sweet home. Occasionally, your mother or an older sibling will prop you up in a cradle, or more commonly, a wooden trough that's been converted into a baby cot. These cradles rock slightly if nudged, which is nice until someone bumps you too hard and you tip sideways. Padding is usually just straw or an old rag. You get to lie there, blinking, drooling, and watching the play of firelight on the walls. There's no mobile spinning gently above you, but maybe there's a dangling bundle of herbs or a wooden charm to keep away bad dreams. And lice, but mostly bad dreams. Sometimes they tie you to a board, literally, a flat piece of wood with straps like a medieval baby snowboard. This way you can be leaned safely against a wall while your parents go about their daily lives. Your role, for now, is to exist quietly and not fall into the fire. That last part is key. Open hearths in the centre of the room mean accidents are not uncommon. Babies occasionally roll or tumble into the embers, which is one reason swaddling is so aggressively enforced. You can't crawl into danger if you can't move. There's another trick your mother uses, hanging you from a beam. No, not like that. Calm down. She takes your swaddled form and suspends you from a sturdy rafter using a cloth sling or basket. You're off the ground, away from sharp tools and, this is important, out of reach of rats. Rats are a constant concern. They love warmth, crumbs and the occasional nibble on soft baby fingers. So yes, you're a floating baby now, dangling above the fire like a tiny, screaming ornament. Cosy. The only relief comes during changing, when the wrappings come off for a little while. The sensation of cool air on your damp red skin is the highlight of your day. But even then, someone's rubbing you down with a rag that's been washed in the river, aka the same water used for laundry, dishwashing and the occasional animal carcass disposal. You can already feel your immune system throwing up its hands. For food, it's still the same options, mother's milk if available, a wet nurse if you're lucky, or some kind of sloppy mash soaked in ale. There's no sterilising bottles or carefully warming formula. Feeding involves cloth rags dipped in oatmeal mush or goat's milk shoved gently or not so gently into your mouth. You choke, sputter, and occasionally get it right. It's not elegant, but it's calories. Whether you can keep them down is another issue. And teething? That's a whole medieval horror show of its own. You don't have teeth yet, but they're coming, and people believe that teething is genuinely dangerous, as in life-threatening. Fever? Blame the teeth. Rash? Also teeth. Diarrhea? Demonic teeth. So when your gums start to swell and you begin chewing your own fist like a rabid beaver, the adults go into panic mode. Some rub honey on your gums, others give you old bread crusts or leather to gnaw on. One popular remedy, a teething charm, a bit of animal bone or coral worn around your neck to ward off evil spirits and prevent death by incisor. There's even a fringe belief floating around certain areas that if a baby teeths early, like super early, it's a sign of demonic influence. Yup, satanic baby teeth. Nothing quite says welcome to the Middle Ages, like a priest giving your gums the side-eye. And yet, even through all this bizarre parenting, you're kind of adored. Your mother watches you constantly, not just to make sure you're breathing, but because in this strange, hard world you represent something fragile and hopeful. She sings to you softly in the evenings, lullabies passed down from grandmothers long buried, songs about lambs, saints, and the importance of not being eaten by wolves. They are oddly comforting. Meanwhile, scholars can't stop debating whether parents loved their children the way modern people do. Some argue that due to high infant mortality, families didn't allow themselves to form deep bonds. Others say emotional connections were just as real, but expressed differently, through acts of care, prayers, and daily protection rituals. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, hiding in the cracks of crumbling parchment and the margins of church registers. But here's a fact that no one debates. Survival as a baby in the Middle Ages is a long shot. Disease, poor hygiene, accidents, and random bad luck are lurking around every hay bale. There's no doctor nearby, maybe a wise woman, sure, but she's probably more skilled with herbal remedies than with infant fevers or choking emergencies. If you make it to your first birthday, everyone will breathe a little easier. Until then, each day is its own tiny miracle. For now, you remain a mostly silent witness to the weird, cold rhythm of the medieval life. There are no toys, no schedules, no developmental milestones being logged on a chart. Just warmth, food, if you're lucky, if you're lucky, and not being dropped. If you can hold on to those three things, you might just get to see the world beyond your smoky little corner of the village. The fire cracks a little louder today. You've been in this world long enough to start making noises that aren't just random gurgles and screams. You're probably flopping around and you're swaddling like a startled fish, eyes wide, gums gleaming with the early shine of trouble. That's right, teething has arrived. It's going about as well as you'd expect in a world with no chilled teething rings, no paediatricians, and no sympathy for your constant drool. You're chewing on everything. A bit of cloth dipped in beer, a rock someone washed once in a puddle. If your family is lucky or a bit wealthy, which is to say they have more than one change of clothes, you might get a polished piece of bone or a carved wooden stick to gnaw on, but mostly it's crusty bread, stiff as a brick and about as clean as the floor. You suck and chew until the crust dissolves into a soggy mass. The crust was from a 3-day-old loaf, left on the hearth to dry for exactly this reason. Medieval cuisine, where even babies start with jaw workouts. Of course you're cranky. You've got a fever, a rash, and your screams have reached that very specific pitch that means everyone else in the house is also one frayed nerve away from howling. There's no real medicine for your discomfort. A village wise woman might offer up a mixture of mashed herbs rubbed onto your gums, something bitter and smelly made from tansy or wormwood. It tastes like death and doesn't help much, but hey, tradition is tradition. Now comes the charming part. Your mother, or your grandmother if she's still around, might take your swaddled, teething self and perform a little protective spell. Nothing fancy. Maybe she whispers a rhyme, maybe she circles your head 3 times with a sprig of rosemary. It's all part of the belief that sickness isn't just physical, it might be spiritual. Maybe a bad spirit has overlooked you. That's a thing, by the way. Being overlooked means someone glanced at you the wrong way, and now you're cursed with colic or hiccups. Totally normal logic. And then there's the frog. Yes, the frog. In certain parts of medieval Europe, people believed that the best cure for teething or rashes was rubbing a live frog on your face. Something about the slime drawing out the sickness. Others preferred placing the frog in a pouch and wearing it around your neck like a disgusting squishy necklace. You don't get a say in this. One moment you're crying in your cradle, the next someone's slapping a cold amphibian on your cheek. Look, you're not special. Everyone's frog rubbed at some point. Meanwhile, your sleep schedule is a disaster. Nights are long and cold, and your cradle is always either too close to the fire or not close enough. No one in your household is sleeping deeply. You wake up crying, they wake up annoyed, and the whole hut gets wrapped in that lovely 3 a.m. tension familiar to parents across time. Except here, the walls are made of dirt and no one has had a bath since harvest. There's a good chance you've developed your first real cough. Maybe your nose is running like a leaky wineskin. Maybe it's something worse. No one's sure. Germ theory hasn't been invented yet, so if you're sick, it must be the weather, or a spirit. Or maybe your father forgot to make an offering at the church. Better light a candle. Better mutter a prayer to St. Blaise, the patron saint of sore throats. You're still too young to talk, but the noises you make are important. Adults listen for the right tones. A strong, healthy wail is good. A weak whimper? Bad omen. You babble in bursts and someone decides you're either blessed or cursed depending on how musical your sounds are. Babies that sing are often considered touched by angels. Or demons. It's hard to say. The line between the two gets blurry when you've got a leaky diaper and you're screaming into a cloud of incense. Let's not forget the siblings. If you have any, and most kids in the Middle Ages do because birth control is an idea centuries away, they're not particularly gentle. An older sister might rock your cradle too hard. An older brother might poke you with a stick to see if you're still alive. Your entertainment, annoyance, and cautionary tale all in one. The toddler stage doesn't really exist as a recognised life phase. You're either a helpless blob or a mini worker in training. This is also when you start getting carried around more. Still swaddled, but sometimes propped on a hip, slung in a cloth or tied to your mother's back while she milks the goat. You're treated like luggage. Warm, heavy, slightly noisy luggage. There are no strollers, no bouncy seats, just manual labour and creative uses of linen. The funny thing, you probably smell like smoke, sour milk and whatever herbal goop was most recently smeared on your gums. Everyone else does too. Bathing is infrequent, and even when it happens, the water is cold, the soap is lye-based, and the tub is shared. So no one's too bothered by your scent. If you reek, it just means you're alive. The dead are the ones who smell sweet, people say. Comforting, right? As for your parents, they might already be planning your future. Not in a dream board kind of way. More in the, who can we apprentice this one to kind of way. Children are economic units. If you survive past age 5, you'll be expected to contribute. Not just chores, real labour. But we're not there yet. For now, you're still in the fire-adjacent snot-faced survival phase. Some scholars argue this period of medieval infancy created a certain toughness. A kind of early callousness to discomfort and suffering. Others say it fostered trauma that just went unspoken. After all, this is a world without therapy or reflective parenting blogs. Children are raised on instinct, community tradition, and the occasional frog. Still, despite everything, despite the fire smoke, the frogs, the unwashed cradle, the constant threat of random death, you're still here. You've made it through the worst of the swaddled months. You're drooling, coughing, biting and clinging to life with chubby little fists. Your family is starting to believe you might actually make it. You don't remember it, but at some point you start getting strapped to furniture. Not for fun, not as some early attempt at safety-conscious parenting, but as the most practical solution to keeping you alive. You've wriggled your way out of the swaddling a few times now. Your legs kick, your arms flail. One of your teeth has finally pushed through, which makes you even bolder. Suddenly, you're a mobile hazard in a house full of open flames, sharp tools, boiling pots, and animals that don't care if you get trampled. So your mother ties you to a bench. It's a normal bench. Maybe even just a sturdy piece of timber with a few iron nails and one splinter too many. She uses whatever's available, strips of linen, a bit of leather, the fraying edge of an old apron, and binds your midsection loosely enough so you can breathe, but tight enough that you can't tip over. Sometimes, if she's working near the hearth and can't keep one eye on you, she'll fasten your cradle to a beam or wedge you between 2 sacks of grain so you literally cannot move. This is how you live now, contained, watched, mostly vertical. You whine a little, but no one rushes over. Crying is background noise. Every hut has at least one child doing it. You've become part of the soundscape of the village. The cluck of hens, the rhythm of a wooden spoon scraping a pot, and your high-pitched complaints about the unfairness of being kept from the fire pit. And let's be clear, the fire is your number one interest. It's warm, it dances, and it's directly in the centre of the house, which means every adult is always near it, which means you're desperate to get closer, which is exactly why you're tied down like a tiny, unhappy goat. There's no baby gate, no baby-proofing. The hearth is always lit, usually covered by a big blackened iron pot hanging from a crooked hook. At any moment someone might throw in a log, a cabbage, a rat, if it's stew night, or a handful of stale barley. Your role in this culinary drama is mostly to stay back and not burst into flames. You're not always successful. It's terrifyingly common for children to get too close, tip forward and burn their hands, or worse, a child with burns is a familiar sight. Scars are part of growing up. At least now you're old enough for a few small freedoms. You're allowed to touch things. Rocks, sticks, pieces of broken pottery, maybe a dull knife someone forgot to hide. You explore your surroundings with the fearless curiosity of a child who has no idea what infection means. You suck on a wooden spoon, you eat ash, you chew on a chicken foil's royal chemise and feather until someone pulls it out of your mouth. The world is a buffet, and you are here for it. Your mother might place you near the doorway on a mild day, where light filters in and you can watch people come and go. The street is just mud and straw lined with carts, dogs, and the occasional bleating sheep being herded toward market. You love the commotion, even if everything smells like manure and sweat. This is your entertainment. There's no puppet show, no music box. Just life, raw and constant, rolling past the open door. Meanwhile, your family has started talking about you like you're a person now. A tiny, unreliable person, but a person nonetheless. They note the way you react to things. How you scream when a goose gets too close, how you laugh when someone sneezes. You've learned a few words, or at least made some noises that your parents insist are words. Everything you do is watched and weighed, not in terms of personality, but in terms of usefulness. Are you strong? Are you alert? Do you seem clever? Which usually just means you don't fall face first into the pig trough. Fringe fact. In some parts of Europe, children who showed signs of being too clever too early were viewed with suspicion. If you babbled too much, walked too soon, or asked strange questions, insofar as a toddler can, people might wonder if you were touched by something supernatural, a changeling perhaps, or simply marked by fate. Some families tried to tamp this down, wrapping the child in charms, keeping them out of moonlight, even feeding them lest to discourage whatever was growing in their spirit. No pressure. And while your family tries to raise you with care, they are stretched thin. Food is limited, sleep is fragmented. Your mother has sores on her hands from laundry and hauling water. Your father might be away for days, working land he doesn't own or paying off a tax he doesn't understand. Your siblings are probably already working in some capacity, and yet here you are, strapped to a bench chewing on something vaguely edible and watching the chickens try to steal grain from the floor. Scholars sometimes debate how aware medieval parents were of child development. Some argue they viewed kids as miniature adults, skipping over infancy and childhood in their minds and pushing for productivity as soon as possible. Others say there was more nuance, that even in the 1300s people recognised stages of childhood, with rituals and expectations that evolved over time. We know some laws distinguished between ages, especially in noble circles. But for a peasant child like you, there are no birthday parties or growth charts. There's just today, and the fact that you haven't fallen into the fire yet. And there's always someone watching, even when no one seems to be. A grandmother muttering prayers as she mends a cloak. A cousin peeking at you while stirring porridge. A neighbour making sure you're still breathing when you nap by the hearth. In this world, community is survival. You're everyone's problem, in the best way. It takes a village not because of sentimentality, but because mortality is high and time is short. Today you might make it until nightfall without injury. You'll fall asleep with your legs still tingling from being bound too long. The fire will burn low. Someone will toss a blanket of woven wool over your tiny frame. You'll dream of whatever babies dream of. Milk, warmth, that one goat that always stares at you. You're safe, for now, held in place not by a crib or baby monitor, but by the sheer stubborn effort of a world that's trying in its own smoke-choked way to keep you alive. It happens slowly at first, almost without anyone noticing. You've been chewing on everything in sight, making suspicious squishy noises, while gnawing at table legs and corners of your blanket. Then one day, you bite down on a scrap of cloth, and crack, That sound, a tooth, your first little dagger pokes through the gum like a pale stone in a field of red. Congratulations, you've officially entered the teething phase of medieval misery, round 2, and spoiler alert, it's not going to be fun. There's no baby's first tooth milestone photo, no excited scribble in a memory book, just your mother noticing you're drooling more than usual, that your breath smells like sour cheese, and that you've developed a new habit of screaming for absolutely no reason, especially at night. Everyone groans. Here it comes, another long round of trying to keep you fed, soothed and alive, while your mouth betrays you from the inside. Your gums swell like overripe berries, angry and tender. You scream as you try to bite through anything, desperate for relief. Bread crusts, old wool, wooden spoons, anything becomes a chew toy. You're like a puppy with a vengeance. But chewing's not enough. The fevers start. Your forehead gets clammy, your cries go hoarse, your mother fans you with her apron and mutters prayers to St. Apollonia, the go-to saint for dental emergencies, even though the concept of dentistry hasn't quite been invented yet. Still better safe than sorry. And here's the problem. Medieval folks don't separate teething from illness. If you get sick while a tooth is coming in, that's it. It's the tooth's fault. You have a fever? That's the tooth. Diarrhea? Tooth. Eye infection? Tooth. Got possessed by a forest demon? Probably that back molar working its way in. Teething becomes this all-encompassing villain. So your caretakers try everything. Honey rubbed on your gums, herbal poultices, smearing soot on your cheeks to draw out the inflammation. Some believe you need to sweat out the pain, so you're wrapped tightly in hot cloth until you're practically poached. In more superstitious households, charms are added to the mix. A wolf's tooth on a string around your neck, a pouch of dried herbs tucked under your shirt. In parts of Germany, it's common to burn a bit of your cradle straw and scatter the ashes to the wind to take away the tooth curse. If things get really desperate, someone might bury a frog under the house. Yes, again with the frog. There's always a frog somewhere in this medical system. You're starting to get suspicious about their role in things. And while all this is happening, your body hot, your gums swollen, your appetite vanishing, you're expected to be tough. No coddling here. Crying too much can wear out your welcome. Your siblings are already sick of the sound of your voice, and your mother needs both hands free to tend to the spinning, the cooking, the patching, the mending, the hauling, and possibly another baby. You're not her whole world. You're one burning log on a much larger fire. Meanwhile, there's the strange unspoken fear in the air. What if this isn't just teething? What if you're touched? A child that cries too much, especially at night, can easily slip into the category of other. A changeling, an imposter left by the fairies. In some villages, the fear runs deep. If your suffering seems unnatural, if you flail too violently, if your eyes roll in your head, if your limbs go stiff, they might try more than herbs and prayers. That's when the line between medicine and ritual gets blurry. There are cases in old records where children are left near fire pits just to see what happens, or held over running water and whispered to. Sometimes it's harmless, sometimes it isn't. Most of the time, though, it's just sad. Parents doing whatever they can think of to stop the endless screaming, to bring the fever down, to survive the night. Now, for all this chaos, here's a bizarre historical fact to chew on. In some parts of Europe, it was believed that if your first tooth came in on the top rather than the bottom, you were cursed. Specifically, you might be destined to become a vampire. Not metaphorically, a literal, post-death blood-drinking vampire. Good luck living that one down in a village where everyone knows everything about everyone. Better hope your teeth grow in the correct order. Scholars still wrestle with how seriously these beliefs were taken. Some think the vampire stuff was just local superstition, exaggerated over time. Others argue that medieval Europe had an incredibly complex and sincere network of belief around children, illness, and the supernatural. The line between real and imagined dangers was porous, especially in rural communities. Medicine, religion, and folklore didn't exist in separate categories. They were all mixed into one slightly terrifying soup. Of course, while your gums are throbbing and your brain's simmering in its own fever, the village moves on. No one stops working just because a baby is sick. Carts still creak down muddy lanes. The church bell still rings in the morning fog. Your father might be off helping dig a new ditch for the manor. Your older siblings are in the fields scaring off crows or picking up horse dung. Your mother sings to herself while stirring a pot, occasionally looking over to dab your forehead with a cloth that used to be white. You cry, you babble, you sleep in fits, and somehow your body keeps fighting. Eventually, if you're lucky, the fever breaks, the tooth finishes its horrible journey. You stop gnawing on the furniture quite so aggressively. The village quiets its muttering. Your mother rests a hand on your chest and feels you breathing deeply for the first time in days. And no one says it out loud, but they all think the same thing. This one might actually live. You're tougher now, not stronger exactly, but hardened. Your body's already been through more than some modern adults. And if another tooth comes in soon, which it will, you'll scream, sure. But maybe not quite as long. Maybe your mother will know the trick that worked last time. Maybe the frogs can have a day off. You've survived another strange and ancient trial of medieval childhood. You've been rubbed with herbs, cursed at, possibly blessed, and almost definitely bitten by a flea mid-fever. And yet, here you are, teething, thriving, one molar closer to surviving another year. You're walking now, not well, not confidently, and definitely not quietly. Your steps are clunky, wide-legged, and sound like sacks of potatoes tumbling down a hillside. But it's official. You've joined the upright crowd. You stumble across the uneven dirt floor, hands raised like a tiny drunk monk performing a blessing no one asked for. Sometimes you fall face first into a pile of straw, sometimes into something less pleasant, but no one rushes to pick you up unless you start bleeding. Around here, falling is part of walking, and walking is part of surviving. Now that you can move under your own power, the whole world opens up, and it's absolutely not ready for you. The family's hut, once a warm cocoon, is now a medieval obstacle course of sharp corners, open areas, boiling pots, slippery floors, and livestock. You toddle between the legs of goats, under tables, over piles of chopped wood. One of your siblings puts a bowl on your head and calls you Sir Knight, and for a glorious 10 seconds you are indeed the most powerful creature in the room. Then you trip over the pig. Yes, there's a pig, maybe two. They sleep in a corner near the hearth, snoring like sweaty accordions. You step on their tail at least once a day. The chickens scatter every time you move. Your mother no longer ties you to furniture, but she glances up constantly from her spinning or weaving to see where you've wandered. You're a walking accident waiting to happen. She keeps a hand on you when she can, but the moment her back is turned, you're gnawing on a broomstick or licking the rim of a chamber pot. Hygiene is not a concept you've encountered yet, or ever will, honestly. Your diet is evolving too. Milk, human or goat, is no longer your only food source. Now you get what everyone else is having, mashed and thinned out for your gumming convenience. Stewed vegetables, pottage, bits of bread dunked in broth. If you're lucky, a spoonful of egg or a sliver of cheese. Most days it's thick grey porridge with mystery specks that might be herbs or might be yesterday's leftovers. You eat with your hands because no one's trusting you with a spoon just yet. You shove food into your face with the joyful commitment of someone who doesn't understand consequences. You eat until you fall asleep mid-chew. You drink beer now. Well, small beer, the watered-down version made specifically for children and sick people. It's not very alcoholic, more like medieval Gatorade. It's safer than water, because water could literally kill you. Streams run brown with everything from dead animals to leaky privies, and unless someone's bothered to boil it, they haven't. Drinking it is like shaking hands with dysentery. So beer it is. Cheers, toddler. Of course, not everything you eat agrees with you. Sometimes you get stomach cramps. Sometimes diarrhea hits you so hard you sit down mid-stride and just accept your fate. No one panics. They wipe you down, wash the cloths in cold river water, and maybe say a few quiet prayers that it's not the start of something worse. Because in this world, tummy trouble is a gateway to a lot of things, and not many of them end with a happy story. Meanwhile, you're starting to speak, sort of. Words tumble out half-formed, a mush of your mother's accent, your father's curses, and the chant of the village priest. You know a few key terms: fire, goat, bread, no. You repeat everything you hear, including the occasional swear that earns a laugh and a raised eyebrow. In some households, your language development is encouraged with rhymes and songs. In others, you are expected to shut up and stay out of the way. Depends on who's raising you and how much sleep they've had. One of the fringe belief creeping into your world now is that children are closest to the spiritual realm. Because you're freshly born and not yet spoiled by sin, people think you can see ghosts, angels, or even the devil. If you stare into a corner and giggle for too long, someone might start muttering a prayer. If you cry at the same time every night, they'll wonder if something invisible is visiting you. There are stories, quiet ones, of toddlers who see things adults can't, who talk to figures no one else perceives. You have no idea you're causing existential panic. You're just fascinated by shadows and the way fire dances on the wall. At this point, you've probably had your first real illness. A fever that lasted 3 days, or a rash that spread across your back like a map of some imaginary kingdom. Maybe a cough that turned wet and rattly. You were spoon-fed a grim-looking syrup made of onions, honey, and something that might have once been a beetle. Your mother sat beside you for hours, eyes darting from your face to your chest to check that you were still breathing. She doesn't have a thermometer, but she knows the heat of a dying child. She's felt it before. Maybe she's felt it too many times. You recover somehow, just barely. You're lighter, quieter, and for a few days less chaotic. Your hair sticks up in strange patches. You smell like a stew of sweat, smoke and fever, but your eyes are clear again, and you're back to poking chickens with sticks. Life, in its own stubborn, clumsy way, goes on. Scholars still puzzle over how medieval families balanced care and survival. Some believe childhood was rushed, that once you could walk and talk you were nudged into adulthood. Others point to lullabies, carvings and church records that suggest people deeply loved and mourned their children. The truth is probably both. Love didn't protect you from hard work or early death, but it was there, woven into the fabric of everyday life, in the way your mother hummed while dressing your sores, or how your father carved your name, spelled wrong, into the beam above your sleeping spot. Today you make it through without injury. Your mother smiles at you once, briefly, when you stack rocks into a tower. Your siblings let you chase them for half a minute before running off to do actual work, and as the sun sinks behind the trees, you fall asleep curled up next to the pig, warm and alive. You're 2 years old now, and the phrase time to be useful has started following you around like a bad smell, which, to be fair, you also produce. The whole concept of childhood in your world isn't so much about self-discovery or finding your spark. It's about survival, contribution, and not getting kicked by a cow. And while no one expects you to plough a field just yet, they do expect you to start pulling your own tiny weight. Your shoes, if you have any, are scraps of leather wrapped around your feet and tied with gut string. They don't match. One's too small and the other has a hole the size of a plum, but that's fine. They're shoes. Most children go barefoot from spring to fall anyway, their soles growing tough enough to walk across gravel like miniature warriors. But you're lucky. Someone thought your feet were worth protecting, which probably means they expect you to live a while. And now that you can walk, follow orders, and occasionally pee in the right direction, you're officially a working member of the household. Nothing major, yet. But you're expected to help. Helping can mean anything from carrying firewood one stick at a time, to picking tiny bugs out of grain, to holding a chicken still while someone else does something deeply traumatic with a knife. You don't always understand what's happening, but you're learning to keep your mouth shut and your hands busy. One of your earliest jobs might be tending to the fire, not managing it, that's too risky, but collecting twigs, blowing on coals or arranging kindling into tiny piles. Fire is life, it's heat, food and light, and sometimes punishment. Keeping it going is a sacred task. You're being taught to respect it early, even as it spits and snaps at your little pink fingers. If your family owns a garden patch, and most do, you'll start your agricultural training with tasks so tedious even the turnips feel sorry for you. You pick rocks out of the soil, you pat down cabbage rows, you stare very hard at weeds while someone decides whether you're ready to pull them without also uprooting everything else. And if you do it wrong, no one yells, they just sigh, heavily, as if they've already given up on you. Motivation in the Middle Ages is mostly guilt and the fear of wasting someone's time. You've also started shadowing your older siblings, which is a gift and a curse. They're your playmates, sure, but they're also your first bosses. One teaches you to fetch water without tripping, another teaches you how to carry eggs without crushing them, though you still manage to drop 2 out of 3. Everything is a lesson. And failure is met with a look that says, I should have taught the goat instead. It's character building, apparently. And yes, there's still play. Sort of. You're allowed to run in circles sometimes, or throw pebbles into a puddle while someone waits for a pot to boil. You learn to entertain yourself with sticks, bits of string, and the occasional exciting bug. A piece of wool becomes a puppet. A knot of straw becomes a horse. Your imagination runs wild not because it's encouraged, but because there's absolutely nothing else to do. One of your favourite jobs, if we can call it that, is chasing away birds. Not all the time, but often enough to feel important. Your family hands you a stick or a pot lid, maybe both. and sends you into a field where the barley's just starting to grow. Your task is simple. Yell at anything with feathers. Crows, sparrows, geese, none of them are welcome. You bang your pot, wave your stick, and run in half circles like a chaotic little windmill. It's sour, exhausting, and weirdly fun, until a goose chases you back. This job isn't just busy work. It matters. A few birds can ruin weeks of planting. If they eat the sprouts, your family eats less in the winter. It's your first taste of real responsibility, and the thrill of it makes your chest puff out like a proud little rooster. When you return, cheeks flushed and clothes muddy, someone might even praise you, softly, grudgingly, like a medieval gold star. Of course, the work never ends. Once you're home, there's sweeping to do, not with a fancy broom, just a bundle of sticks tied together. You're sent to the hearth with orders to sweep out the ashes. You try. You mostly just move the dirt from one spot to another, but no one complains. It's about the gesture. As long as you're not underfoot or setting yourself on fire, you're considered helpful. Here's a historical oddity. In some regions, small children were trained to memorize family prayers and chants before they could even form full sentences. Repetition was everything. You were expected to parrot back the same lines over and over, even if you didn't understand the words. Latin liturgy wasn't just for monks. It trickled down into homes, into lullabies and chores. You might sweep while murmuring a garbled Ave Maria, half blessing the hearth as you go. And let's talk about toys, because you don't have many. The lucky few, children of lords, merchants, or particularly talented craftsmen, might have carved wooden animals or dolls with painted faces. You've got a rock that looks vaguely like a sheep. Sometimes you pretend it's your pet. Sometimes you throw it at your brother. Either way, it's your most prized possession until someone takes it. Play and work blur together at this age. Your games often mimic chores. You pretend to stir a pot. You mock scold the chickens. You tie bits of twine around your waist and pretend you're ploughing the dirt with a stick. No one's encouraging you to express yourself. They're encouraging you to be useful, and the sooner you look like a mini-adult, the better. Some historians argue this blending of play and labour was psychologically damaging. Others say it fostered resilience, responsibility, and early skill development. Still others shrug and point out that it was all people knew. Childhood, as a concept, didn't have soft edges. It had corners and calluses. You learned by doing or failing, and hoped someone noticed before you accidentally got trampled by an ox. By the time the sun sets, you've done your part. You chased birds, you carried a bucket, you fell in the mud. You cried once, but nobody noticed. Your day ends the same way it always does, huddled near the hearth, half listening to stories you don't quite understand, maybe a tale about a knight who slayed a dragon, maybe just gossip about someone in the next village who caught the red sickness. You fall asleep on the floor, curled up like a dog, with soot on your nose and straw in your mouth. You're 2, maybe 2.5, you don't know numbers yet or birthdays, or that the average life expectancy for someone like you isn't great. But you know this much: work equals food, noise equals trouble, and survival's an everyday job. You're 4 years old now, roughly the age when someone in your village first looks you up and down and decides, yes, this one's ready to shout at birds alone in a field. It's a rite of passage, sort of. Today you're handed your very own pot lid and stick, and with the minimal ceremony, you're marched out to a patch of land full of new shoots and very confident sparrows. No one accompanies you. There's no adult supervision. Just a quick point at the sky and a "don't let the crows get in the barley," followed by everyone walking away. It's terrifying and thrilling all at once. You're alone, truly alone, for the first time in your life. The village is a smudge behind you. The forest a darker smudge ahead. Your task is simple: stay put, stay loud, and keep anything with wings off the crops. But of course you're 4. So within an hour your stick becomes a sword, the birds become dragons, and the pot lid is your magical shield. You're no longer a scared peasant child. You're a warrior. A guardian of grain, the hero of this muddy stretch of farmland. Until, of course, the geese show up. And then you run. Being a bird scarer, or bogle boy as they say in some regions, is your first real job, even if no one's paying you in anything but boiled turnips and the occasional pat on the head. You stand for hours, clapping and yelling, inventing songs to keep yourself from getting bored. Sometimes you lie down and stare at the sky, tracking clouds like ships. Other times you chase shadows for no reason at all. It's lonely, repetitive, and slightly magical. You feel small in a very large world, and you're just starting to realise how much of that world wants to bite, peck, or eat you. You bring your lunch with you, wrapped in an old cloth. It's nothing fancy, just a hunk of bread, A wedge of something that's pretending to be cheese, and maybe a bit of cold porridge pressed into a lump. You sit on a rock, watching your food attract the very birds you were hired to chase. There's a lot of irony in this job, but you don't have the vocabulary for that yet. You just scream and wave your arms until the starlings back off. If it rains, you get wet. If it hails, you get pelted. If the sun burns down, your skin peels and freckles. There's no umbrella, no shade, no complaint department. You learn to wrap a rag around your head like your mother does and pull your tunic up over your knees to keep the mud off. You learn to squat, hunch, run, and throw rocks with surprising accuracy. These are your skills now, and danger isn't always feathered. There's always the forest, thick and dark beyond the edge of the field. People tell stories about what lives there. Wolves, witches, bandits, and worse. You don't know what's real and what's invented now to keep you from wandering off. Still, you glance at the trees more than once, half expecting to see glowing eyes or hear a flute playing itself. You stick close to your post. You do not test the limits of your little stretch of field. Sometimes other children are nearby, guarding their own plots. You shout across the field, trading nonsense words or rude gestures. You invent games involving pebbles or sticks tossed at imaginary targets. For a few brief moments, it almost feels like a social life, but mostly it's silence and shouting, your own echo in a sea of barley. When you return home, your legs are sore, your hands are sticky, and your hair is full of burrs. No one throws a parade. You're handed a cup of weak ale and told to sit down and eat. But your mother glances at you a little differently now. You've gone off into the world and come back. That means something, even if no one says it out loud. Is it around this age that you start being noticed more by the local priest? Not in a creepy way, hopefully, but in a time to start knowing your Latin prayers kind of way. If your family has any ambitions for you beyond fieldwork, and again this depends entirely on gender, luck, and whether your father is currently alive, you might be sent to church more regularly. You sit on a stone bench that numbs your legs and listen to long passages in a language you don't understand. You pick out a few words here and there. Domine, Amen, Peccatum. You mouth them back like spells. Your real education, though, is still out in the field and the home. You learn to recognise plants, what heals, what burns, what makes the chicken sick. You learn to spot signs of a storm in the sky. You learn what a tired goat sounds like, how to chase pigs without getting bitten, and how to stay upright on muddy slopes. You learn which berries are food and which ones sent the neighbour's child into a 3-day hallucination. Here's a fringe fact. In some parts of medieval England and France, children were believed to be more in tune with the supernatural, especially before they reached the age of reason around 7. So kids like you are sometimes asked to observe omens, cloud shapes, bird patterns, dreams, and report them to adults, who interpreted them as signs. You, 4-year-old you, might be consulted before a planting season or a wedding, because children, being innocent and closer to the spiritual realm, were considered little prophets, or at least slightly more trustworthy than the drunk uncle. But let's not kid ourselves. You're mostly seen as a tool with potential, a work in progress, a muddy, shrieking sleepwalking project. Your opinions don't matter yet, but your effort does. You're in that weird in-between phase, no longer a helpless baby, not yet an apprentice. You're a placeholder, a living reminder that more work is always coming. Scholars continue to bicker about this age. Was it carefree, full of outdoor play and imagination? Or was it the start of an unending slide into labour and obedience? Probably both. You get your moments. Moments when the clouds look like castles and the barley sways like waves and you forget you're hungry. But those moments are balanced by the sore feet, the pecking birds, and the constant low-level awareness that you are, in every sense, replaceable. But tonight, as you curl up in your shared bed of straw, your muscles aching from a day of shouting at geese and chasing off crows, you feel something. Pride, maybe. Or just the comfort of returning to the smoke and warmth of home. You earned your food today, you didn't get lost in the woods, the birds stayed out of the barley. That's a win by medieval standards. Let's talk about fun, medieval style, because by now you're probably wondering when the toys arrive. The answer, they don't. Not really. You're 5 now and the concept of playtime exists, but only in the cracks between chores, meals, and being shouted at by taller people. You play when no one's watching, or at least when no one has a better use for you. But don't expect a chest of wooden trains or a hand-stitched dollhouse. Your toys are whatever your hands can reach and no one immediately confiscates. So what does medieval fun look like for a child like you? It starts with the ground. Dirt is your canvas, your table, your best friend. You scratch patterns into it with a stick. You make tiny mounds, pretend they're castles, then stomp them to dust in heroic battle reenactments involving mostly yelling. Rocks are soldiers, pine cones are monsters. You've got an imagination sharpened by endless monotony and a chronic lack of supervision. One of your prized possessions is a bent spoon you found outside a tanner's shop. It's not yours, not officially, but you keep it hidden under a loose floorboard. To you, it's everything, a sword, a ladle, a sceptre, until your brother finds it, steals it, and melts part of it over the fire for science. You cry, he gets slapped, and the spoon becomes legend, a family saga in one bent piece of iron. If you're lucky, someone carves you a toy. A wheeled horse, a crude doll made from bundled cloth and tied with string. The face is usually just a couple dots or stitches. No limbs, no voice box, no wardrobe. Still, you carry it around like it's the Holy Grail. Until a pig eats it. That's a real possibility. Pigs in medieval villages are not the charming cartoon characters modern stories make them out to be. They're enormous, aggressive garbage disposals with hooves. They eat everything, including fingers if you're not fast. Your games involve chasing, hiding, throwing. You and the other village children run laps around buildings, through animal pens, across patches of grass that may or may not have something sharp buried in them. Hide and seek is a favourite, though it gets dicey when someone hides in the hayloft and falls asleep, resulting in a full-on search party and at least one accusation of fairy abduction. It's fine, he was just napping. You also play with fire. Not intentionally, of course, but fire is everywhere, and the line between dangerous and fun is very thin. You might toss bits of straw into the hearth just to watch them vanish. You try to see how close you can get without singeing your hair. You touch a pot that your mother told you not to touch. You learn, quickly, sometimes painfully. Your friends are a ragged group of loud, barefooted chaos agents. You bond over shared bruises and snotty noses. You trade bits of string and shout nonsense rhymes. You copy the adults in ways that make them laugh or swear, depending on the timing. You learn songs that are barely songs, more like chanting taunts mixed with local gossip. One of them involves insulting the miller's wife's feet. You don't know what the joke means, but it's always good for a giggle. Seasonal festivals are the real jackpot for fun, though the word fun needs a bit of medieval translation. On feast days, the whole village might gather in the churchyard for the games. There's wrestling in the mud, stick fighting, dancing in circles to flute music so shrill it probably attracts owls. Someone brings a puppet show, and for 20 minutes you stare in awe at a cloth dragon with button eyes. Then the puppeteer tells a story so dark it involves 3 deaths and a baby being eaten by a bear. Classic. Food during these events is slightly better than usual. You might get a honey cake or roasted apples or, dream of dreams, a sweet made from spiced dough and fried in fat. You eat until your stomach hurts and then run in circles until you throw up, which is exactly what's expected. You're a child, and these moments, rare as they are the closest thing you get to unstructured joy. Sometimes a travelling troupe of performers passes through. Jugglers, fire breathers, musicians. You watch with wide eyes, your mouth hanging open, forgetting for a moment that you're covered in mud and bug bites. You dream about being one of them. A juggler, maybe, or the boy who flips in the air. But then someone pulls you away to carry a bucket or fetch a sibling, and that dream tucks itself back into your bones. And then there are the stories, told by firelight, whispered on straw mattresses, passed between mouths like spells. Fairy tales aren't charming in your world. They're warnings, tales of children stolen by spirits, boys who disobey and vanish in the forest, girls who speak to wolves and aren't seen again. Every creature in the woods wants to eat you. Every stranger might be cursed. And yet, you beg to hear them again and again. You love the fear. It's the good kind, the kind that lives safely in stories until you have to walk through the forest alone. Quirky side fact. Some of your toys might be made from dead animals, no joke. A pig's bladder makes a fantastic ball when inflated and tied off. It's light, bouncy, and only smells a little like horror. You kick it around with your friends, squealing every time it wobbles in the air, until it pops. Then it's back to rocks and sticks. Scholars often debate whether medieval children really played. Some argue that life was too harsh, too focused on survival. Others point to depictions in art and written accounts that clearly show kids playing with hoops, dolls, and even early board games. The truth, as usual, is complicated. Children did play, but usually with whatever was lying around, and only after they'd done their chores or avoided being caught underfoot. Joy was allowed, just not scheduled. Today, after hours of banging pot lids together and running in mud so thick you lost a shoe, you collapse next to the fire. Your hands are scraped, your knees are green, your nose is running like a leaky jug, but you smile because for a few brief minutes today no one asked you to work. No one yelled. You played. You imagined. You were something more than useful. You were free. You are 5, maybe 6, and by now filth is your default state. Dirt isn't something you step in, it's something you wear. It's caked under your fingernails, layered into your scalp and ground so deeply into your feet they look like they belong to a creature in a bestiary. Bathing in theory is something people do. In practice, you might get washed a couple of times a year, more often if you've rolled in something that actively offends the senses. But even then, washed means standing in cold water while someone scrubs you with what feels like a bristly animal tail, dipped in lye. So it's no surprise that every child in the village, yourself included, walks around in a personal cloud of dust, body odour and barely contained illness. If you're not sneezing, you're coughing. If you're not coughing, you're scratching something that probably has a name in Latin. Health is relative. The phrase under the weather doesn't really apply here. You are the weather. You leak, you stink, you host fleas like a hotel, and you've absolutely had worms at least once. But you're still here, sniffling and limping through life with a smile that's missing 2 front teeth. Infections are common, but not well understood. You get a swollen lump on your leg, and someone might rub goose fat on it and call it a day. You get a fever, and your mother wraps you in warm rags and leaves a bowl of chopped onions under your bed to draw out the heat. If that doesn't work, she might consult the village wise woman, who will suggest more onions, but this time boiled in beer and poured over your chest. Medieval medicine is just layers of strange soup being applied to the wrong part of the body. You sneeze constantly. People say bless you with genuine concern, because in some parts of Europe it's believed your soul could fly out during a sneeze, leaving your body temporarily vulnerable to demons. So every bless you is not just polite, it's magical shielding. If you sneeze too often, someone might burn rosemary in the hearth, or wave fennel near your face. It smells like disappointment, and does absolutely nothing. What really defines your experience, though, is the constant cycle of minor ailments passed among children like coins at market. Everyone's got a cough. Everyone's covered in sores. If you show up to church without visible rash or mucus, you're a miracle child. Otherwise, you sit in the back with the other crusty, wheezing urchins and try not to faint from the smell of incense. There are always whispers of the big diseases, though, capital P plague being the worst of them. It's not here now, not this year, but people remember. The adults still talk about the last wave, about the carts, the burning clothes, the pits. You hear these stories with wide eyes, imagining death as a skeleton in a cloak who just walks into town and starts pointing. You don't really understand what it means, only that when someone coughs too hard, the adults glance at each other with tight expressions. When a sickness spreads through your village, and it always does, there's no quarantine. Not really. People try to stay home, but it's hard to distance when you share one bed with 3 other people and a pig. The church might hold special masses. The priest might sprinkle everyone with holy water, which comes from a suspiciously muddy bucket and smells vaguely like mushrooms. And when someone dies, it's fast. One day they're coughing, the next they're wrapped in a sheet and buried behind the chapel. No headstone, just a rock and a memory. Here's a strange medieval belief. If you get sick too often, it might be because you're being punished. Not by God necessarily, though he's always an option, but by neighbours, fairies, or even your own ancestors. Someone might have said something, offended the wrong spirit, or forgotten to leave an offering at the altar. And now, boom! Ooh, fever. That's the logic. Medicine and superstition blur until you don't know where the doctor ends and the exorcist begins. Some children are considered lucky if they only get mild fevers or recover quickly. Others are called fragile, which is basically a polite way of saying don't get too attached. You hear that word sometimes in hushed tones, whispered over your younger sibling who still hasn't stood up on their own. You don't know what it means, not really, but the way adults say it makes your chest feel heavy. And yes, kids die. A lot. One week it's someone from the next hut over. The next, it's a boy you played hide and seek with just 3 days ago. You ask where he went, and someone says, he's with the angels now, and that's the end of it. No funerals like we have today, just a brief prayer, a wooden cross, and then everyone goes back to milking goats. Scholars have long debated how medieval people processed this constant loss. Some argue that high mortality rates made people emotionally numb, pragmatic. Others believe that grief was just more private, less dramatic, and often expressed through prayer or action. Either way, you don't see many tears. You see silence. You see bread left uneaten on a shelf. You see your mother staring at the fire, not moving long after everyone else is asleep. But through all the sickness and sadness, life keeps dragging forward. You still have to sweep the floor. You still have to haul water. Even if your nose is running and you're coughing like an old man with a pipe, you're expected to show up. The cows don't care that your stomach hurts. The birds don't care that your head feels like it's full of bees. And the pigs will eat you, sick or not. There's a kind of dark comedy in it all. Like when you develop a rash and your aunt insists you've got plague fingers, but it turns out to be a rash from sleeping too close to the fireplace. Or when the village healer tells your mother to have you swallow a pebble soaked in vinegar to fix your sore throat. You try, gag, throw up all over your own feet, and then somehow do feel better the next day. Coincidence? Miracle? Pebble magic? Who knows? Day you wake up with a cough that rattles deep in your chest, but no fever. That's a win. You go outside barefoot and sniffling to scare birds out of the barley field. You shout your name at the sky just to hear it echo. You wave your arms, you laugh, you sneeze so hard you nearly fall over. Somewhere in the distance a bell rings. Someone's died. Again. But you're still here. Still gross, still crusty, still clinging to life with both dirty hands and a nose that never stops running. You may be a walking pile of germs, but you're alive. And in this world, that's all anyone can ask. At night, just before sleep wraps its pokey fingers around you, someone tells you a story. Maybe it's your mother, your oldest sister, or the old woman who lives 2 doors down and smells like onions and candle wax. These stories aren't cute. They don't have talking animals learning life lessons or cheerful morals about sharing. No, bedtime tales in your world are mostly warnings. Don't go near the woods, or the green-eyed witch will take your tongue. Don't walk alone after sunset, or the dead will hear your footsteps. Don't leave the fire unattended, or the ash goblin will crawl in through the chimney and eat your toes. Cozy, right? These aren't just stories, they're instructions. Oral survival guides wrapped in fear and folklore. Each one reinforces the same point. The world is not safe, especially for children. Danger lives everywhere. In the woods, the river, the sky, even under your own bed. Every creature has teeth, every shadow holds secrets, and every mistake could be your last. You clutch your blanket, which is really just a scratchy piece of wool with a few questionable stains, and you try not to breathe too loudly in case something hears. You've never even seen a book. You wouldn't recognise one if it fell on your head. Stories come from mouths, not pages, and they travel from one set of chapped lips to another, shifting slightly with every telling. Your grandmother swears she once saw a fairy steal a baby in the middle of the night. Your cousin insists he met a man with goat feet who lived behind the church. Your brother claims the forest trees whisper names when no one's watching. And you believe all of it. Why wouldn't you? And here's the truly charming part. These stories aren't just metaphors. In the Middle Ages, belief in the supernatural isn't quaint. It's functional. Fairies, demons, ghosts, witches, they're all part of the ecosystem, like squirrels or wolves. The church preaches about sin and salvation by day, but the villagers whisper about curses and monsters by night. You don't see a contradiction. You just hope the saints and the spirits don't pick the same day to come calling. Take the story of the changeling. That one hits close to home. If a child suddenly starts behaving oddly, staring blankly, crying too much, not growing as expected, there's a good chance people will say it's not the real child. Fairies are said to steal healthy babies and leave behind their own twisted offspring. Sometimes, if you had a cousin who was sickly or different, someone in town might mutter about changelings behind their hand. It's not just mean, it's dangerous. There are records of families trying to force the fairy out through exposure to fire, cold, or worse. You know the stories. They stick in your chest like splinters. Your own family keeps certain charms near the bed. Bundles of herbs, a broken horseshoe, a St. Bridget's cross woven from reeds. None of them look special, but each is supposed to do something. Protect, guard, ward off. There's a sprig of rowan hung above the door. No one explains it. It's just there, like the smoke in your lungs or the rat that lives behind the barrel. The forest is the scariest part of your landscape, and it looms in the distance, dark and still even when the wind howls through the fields. Your parents use it as a threat. Don't misbehave or we'll leave you for the wood spirits. You laugh. nervously. There are real things in those woods. Bandits, wolves, wild boars. But the stories keep layering on the dread. You've heard about trees that bleed if cut, about ponds where the dead float just under the surface, always smiling. Sometimes you dream of the forest and wake up with your hands clenched into fists. And yet you're drawn to these stories. You whisper them to other children when you're meant to be quiet. You act them out, casting each other as goblins and saints. Fear becomes entertainment. The unknown becomes play. You chase each other with sticks and yell, "I'm the crone who eats toes," and collapse into giggles. You have no idea that the crone you're mocking may be based on a woman who lived down the lane and vanished mysteriously one winter. The villagers' belief in magic is woven through everything. A fever might be caused by a spirit, a spoiled harvest, definitely a curse, a child falling from a tree. Probably fairies again. There's always a reason, and that reason is never accident or coincidence. It's punishment, misstep, imbalance. So you learn to be cautious, not just of wild animals, but of words, of glances, of nighttime silence. A quirky historical footnote here. In some parts of medieval Europe, people believed that you could protect a child by passing them through a hollow tree or under an arch made of stone. You were once carried under an arched root near the edge of the forest when you were sick. Your mother didn't say why. She just murmured something under her breath and carried you back. You felt better the next day. Coincidence? You don't ask. Scholars today debate whether children really believed these stories, or just went along with what adults told them. But when you're 5 and your entire world is one long list of don'ts, you don't need to believe in fairies for the stories to matter. You feel them, in the cold spot under the stairs, in the way the wind groans around the church steeple, in the way animals sometimes stare at nothing for a little too long. And while modern bedtime stories are meant to soothe, yours are meant to shape behaviour. The message is clear. Stay close to home, obey your parents, never stray from the path. If you don't listen, there are consequences. Dark, toothy consequences with names no one wants to say after sundown. Tonight, as you lie on the floor beside your siblings, sharing a straw mattress that crunches every time you move, your sister whispers about the bell woman, who walks through villages ringing a silver bell before someone dies. You clutch the hem of your tunic, eyes wide. The wind scratches at the wooden shutters. Your stomach growls. You're not sure if you're hungry or just scared. But sleep eventually drags you under. You dream of a forest filled with voices, some friendly, some not. You walk between trees taller than churches, with a pot lid in your hand and bare feet sinking into moss. In the distance, something sings your name. You'll wake up sore and coughing, same as always, but tonight, for just a little while, your fears wear a different face, and you welcome it. You are 6 now, which, in medieval timekeeping, is roughly the age when people stop thinking of you as a small child and start treating you as a smaller, less competent adult. The shift is subtle but unmistakable. People start asking more from you, not just to be helpful, but to know things, to remember, to recite, to listen the first time or suffer the consequences. There's a pressure in the air now, like the fire's heat, constant and unavoidable. You've entered the should-know-better-by-now phase of your brief, muddy life. And unless you were born with a fortune and a title, you weren't. Your education, such as it is, will happen in one of 2 places, at home or in the hard wooden pews of a small, echoey church with a smell of mildew and dying candles. Either way, it's not going to be fun. There's no glitter glue, no sing-alongs, no letter of the day. Just rules, repetition, and someone older than God himself barking Latin at you like it's your mother tongue. If you're a boy, and that's a very big unfair if, you might be allowed to study with the local priest, depending on your family's connections and how desperate the church is for another low-level acolyte to pour wine and pretend to know what Gregorian chant is. Your school is probably the chilly back corner of a church, or a monk's cramped study with 1 window and 2 books, neither of which you're allowed to touch. The ink is expensive, the pages are priceless, and you're just a sneeze away from ruining both. Learning to read isn't guaranteed. In fact, it's rare. Most peasants never read a word in their lives, but boys with potential, meaning sons of landholders, scribes, or slightly ambitious parents, might be taught their letters through hours of recitation, threats, and the occasional whack with a stick. The alphabet is sung like a hymn. You learn by chanting it in rhythm with the other boys, your voice echoing through the stone walls. each vowel a soft prayer for release. You don't know what half the words mean. You don't know why you're learning them, only that it pleases someone when you get them right and angers someone when you don't. The letters themselves are magical, strange pointy things inked on parchment that can supposedly say things out loud when looked at properly. It's all a bit ridiculous, and yet you try, because trying is safer than not. Now, if you're a girl, different story. Unless your parents are unusually progressive, or desperate for a literate nun in the family, your education is domestic, handed down through generations like sourdough starter. You learn by watching and doing. You learn how to thread a needle, how to stir a pot without burning your hand, how to spin flax into thread, how to carry water without spilling it all over your shoes. These are your letters. Your syllables are measured in loaves of bread and clean linen. Sometimes your mother or older sister might teach you a prayer, whispered as you stitch. You repeat it under your breath, not because you understand the words, but because they sound like protection, like armour made of breath. Most days, though, education happens through yelling. Adults shout instructions while chopping onions or chasing pigs, and you're expected to absorb knowledge like a sponge soaking up soup. If you ask too many questions, you get told, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. If you don't ask enough, you get smacked for doing something wrong. So you aim for the middle, quiet, observant, and constantly pretending you knew that already. One odd thing you're always being taught, whether through church or superstition, is how to be obedient. Not just in your actions, but in your thoughts. You mustn't question authority, not the priest, not your parents, not the system. Your body isn't fully yours, your time isn't either. You're a link in the chain of labour, service and prayer. The earlier you accept this, the smoother your life becomes. Resistance is for saints and rebels, and you are neither. There are no school bells, no packed lunches, no recess. If you're learning with the church, you arrive before sunrise and leave when your knees are numb and your head's pounding. If you're learning at home, your lesson ends when your chores start. And they always start early. Fringe fact, in some monastic schools, students were taught by rote, not just language, but punishments. Some schools had exact tables. Mispronouncing a word earned a slap. Dropping a wax tablet earned a cane to the palm. Forgetting your Latin. That was penance and a long lecture about the devil whispering in your ear. You'd think these places would be kinder to children. You'd be wrong. The only fun part of church school is the occasional song. You might be taught to sing parts of Mass or a psalm. The melodies are slow, winding things that get stuck in your head like burrs. You hum them while hauling water or poking the ashes, and if you sing well, someone might even smile at you. That's worth more than bread some days. Outside the rare schooling, most of your education is work. You're taught how to thatch a roof, how to stack wood, how to gather herbs without accidentally poisoning the stew. You learn which mushrooms are safe, which berries stain your fingers red, and how to tell the difference between a sick goat and a lazy one. This is your curriculum, the forest, the fire, the field, the fever. The debates among historians rage on. Was this a lost childhood? Was it a brutal training ground for adulthood? Or did children simply experience a different kind of freedom? One without structure but full of agency? There's no consensus, only fragments, paintings of children herding sheep, poems about unruly boys, letters from monks complaining about students who fart too much during prayers. Today your lesson is all of it. You carry a heavy jug without spilling it. You recite a prayer at dusk without stumbling. You remember how to bundle nettles without getting stung. No one gives you a gold star, but your mother glances at you from the hearth and doesn't scowl. Your brother smacks your head slightly less hard. The priest nods when you mumble Kyrie eleison in the right rhythm. You don't know much, but you know enough. Enough to keep from being hit, enough to keep from starving, enough to survive. And in this world, enough is the highest grade you're going to get. 7. You're 7 now. The number rolls monpause around your mind like a smooth pebble. Lucky, sacred, old enough. Old enough for responsibility, for work, for the grim nod your father gives you one morning that says, you're ready to leave. It's not exactly dramatic. No ceremony, no parting feast. Just the usual grey morning, the usual chill in the air, and your mother stuffing an extra slice of black bread into your hand while muttering under her breath. Today you're being handed off. This is your first real transition. Not a birthday, not a rite of passage, but a practical shift in ownership. You've been apprenticed, sort of, given over, lent out. However you phrase it, the point is the same. Your family can no longer afford to feed one more mostly useless mouth, and someone else needs a child to sweep floors and maybe, eventually, learn a trade. So you go, if you're lucky. And again, this entire life hinges on the coin toss of medieval luck. You're sent to a craftsman, a cooper, a weaver, a shoemaker, someone who does something with their hands that people are willing to pay for. If you're really lucky that someone doesn't hate children, they might even have their own, and you become part of a makeshift sibling horde, sleeping on shared mats, stealing bits of dinner from each other's bowls and learning how to hammer wood without losing a finger. The first day is terrifying. You carry a small sack with 2 pieces of clothing, a spoon, and a bundle of your mother's herbs tucked in like a secret. The town you arrive in isn't far, but it feels foreign. New walls, new smells, new adults who call you boy or girl without bothering to learn your name. You nod a lot. You try to be small and helpful. You smile, but not too much. Smiling can look like defiance if you do it wrong. You're introduced to your new master. He looks at you like you're a stray dog he didn't actually want but agreed to feed out of obligation. He tells you to call him sir or master or nothing at all. His wife doesn't smile. She sizes you up like a chicken about to be plucked and says, "Don't break anything." Your new sleeping place is a pile of old cloth near the fireplace, right next to a cracked jar full of nails. The apprenticeship doesn't start with skills. No one hands you a chisel and says, "Let's build something." First, you sweep all day. You sweep dust, wood, shavings, bits of cloth. You empty chamber pots. You fetch water. You scrub benches with bristly brushes until your knuckles are raw. You are tested constantly, not just for obedience, but for endurance. How many hours before you cry, how long before you speak out of turn, they're watching, measuring. But in between all the drudgery, you start to learn. You see how shoes are stitched, how the bellows feed the fire, how the loom moves in slow rhythm like a sleepy giant. You begin to recognise materials, good wool, bad thread, the difference between ash and oak just by the smell. No one teaches you formally. You learn through repetition, mistakes, and the occasional clipped instruction. You are quite literally shaped by the work. There was no set term for apprenticeship at this age. It's all vague agreements and mumbled promises. He'll stay till he's old enough to do real work, your father said. That could mean years. It could mean forever. My children never return home. Not because they die, though many do, but because they become absorbed into the household of the master. They take the surname, they marry into the family, they become something else. If you're unlucky, and statistically speaking you probably are, you're not apprenticed to a trade but sent to work as a servant. You fetch, carry, clean, obey. You don't learn a skill. You become a tool, and while not always cruel, the household has no emotional investment in you. You're replaceable. If you break your arm, you're scolded for being clumsy. If you cry, you're told to do it quietly where no one can see. And if you're a girl, the rules are sharper. You're expected to work, to clean, to keep your eyes lowered. You learn domestic arts with a sense of urgency because soon, too soon, you'll be considered of age to marry, or worse, to be taken advantage of by men who see you as part of the house, not a person in it. There's no protection, just whispers, just warnings, stay in the light. Don't linger after dark. Keep your head down. Girls grow up fast and their childhoods end earlier, often without anyone even noticing. But even here, among the ash and orders, there are moments. You sneak bites of fresh bread. You laugh with another apprentice over a botched task. You hum a song your mother used to sing while scrubbing a pot. You're growing into something, someone, even if no one calls you by name anymore. You're becoming skilled, observant, cautious, and, in your own way, powerful. There's a scholarly debate about whether these early apprenticeships were exploitative or educational. Some argue that medieval children were essentially indentured servants. Others point to the way skills were passed down, apprentices eventually gaining freedom, land, and reputation. There's truth in both views. Some children were abused, used up, discarded. Others became masters in their own right. But all of them, like you, started at the bottom, on the floor with the broom, and so, today, you sweep. You count your blisters and keep your mouth shut. You memorize the sounds of the tools in motion. You practice tying knots in the dark. You listen for the moment when someone says, "Do it again," but better. You're 7. You have no idea if this life will be your whole future or just a stepping stone. You only know that tomorrow the broom will be waiting, and that maybe, just maybe, you'll graduate to the hammer. Church is a lot less exciting than the forest stories made it out to be. You imagine something shining, sacred, maybe even magical. Instead, it's mostly cold, echoey stone and the smell of damp wool. You're expected to attend regularly now, especially since you've crossed that invisible line between helpless child and small walking sinner. Church isn't a place for play, it's a place for quiet suffering, and you do suffer. Through long hours of Latin you don't understand, kneeling until your legs go numb, and the dizzying aroma of incense thick enough to choke a goat. You wear your best tunic, which is just the least mended one, and your hair gets combed roughly before you leave. If your family can afford shoes, you wear them, though they pinch and make your feet sweat in ways that feel deeply unholy. The church is only a short walk from the village centre, but the moment you step inside, the temperature drops. Everything is darker than you expect. Even the light through the tiny windows feels like it's been filtered through centuries of dust. You're not seated with your family, not always. Children are often gathered in the back or along the sides where adults can glare at you more efficiently. You shuffle in quietly, bow your head like you've been told, and do your best not to fidget. But the benches are too tall, your feet dangle, and your knees are sore before the second prayer begins. Your job here is to observe, to mimic, to absorb piety like smoke. The priest wears heavy robes, his voice a droning river of Latin that you've learnt to bob your head in time with. You don't understand most of what he says, but certain words stand out: peccatum, domine, miserere. They sound serious, sacred, almost dangerous. You say them under your breath, the syllables tasting like something forbidden and ancient. Church services are long, longer than anything else in your life, except maybe harvest days or the winter nights when no one can sleep, and everyone just sits around gnawing on bread ends. You're expected to kneel, stand, sit, bow, repeat, all in time with the rest of the congregation. If you're off by even a second, your mother might pinch your arm. Not hard, just enough to make you understand. And if you're lucky enough to be learning your letters with the priest or a monk, you're also learning prayers. Long ones. You recite the Pater Noster with the rhythm of a chant, not always knowing what it means, but understanding its gravity. Some days the priest quizzes you. He makes you say the words in front of others. If you mess up, you get the stick. Not the big stick, just the quick, flat one they keep behind the lectern for motivating children. The church building itself is fascinating in a way no one encourages you to admit. The altar gleams with candlelight, and you're pretty sure one of the saints carved above it has eyes that move when no one's looking. The statues are chipped, worn smooth by decades of hands, but still powerful. You know their names, St. Mary, St. Peter, St. George, and their stories, which are often more terrifying than comforting. One was skinned alive, another was beheaded. One tamed a dragon and then got martyred anyway. You're starting to get the sense that being holy doesn't guarantee a happy ending. Above you, the rafters groan. Birds live up there, you're sure of it. Sometimes during long sermons, you try to count the cracks in the ceiling or spot the little feathers drifting down from the beams. It's one of the few distractions you're allowed. If you talk, if you laugh, if you do anything loud enough to draw attention, you'll be yanked by the ear out of the chapel and made to stand in the cold with the other troublemakers. One fringe fact that almost no one talks about, but you've overheard once from the old man with a cough who sits by the door. Sometimes people are buried beneath the church floor, right under where you're sitting. Important ones. Lords, priests, sometimes even children. You press your foot to the ground and imagine the bones just inches below. You don't sleep well that night. Church isn't just about God, it's about order. About reminding you every week where you stand in the grand, miserable ladder of medieval existence. You are not the top. You are closer to the bottom than the shoes on the priest's feet. You listen to lessons about sin, about obedience, about the fires of hell and the promise of heaven for those who behave. There's a painting on the wall, chipped and faded, that shows the damned being devoured by creatures with too many teeth. You stare at it every week, wondering if that will be you, just for accidentally stealing a plum. The mass ends with bells and smoke. You file out slowly, your knees aching, your stomach growling. You won't eat until later, maybe not until the evening, but at least you're outside again under the sky. Your mother claps her hands over your shoulders and tells you, "You did well," which is the closest you'll get to a hug today. Back home, you still play at church. It's a strange kind of make-believe. lining up your siblings and waving a stick like it's a holy relic. You mumble Latin gibberish while the others try not to laugh. Then someone farts, and the entire ceremony collapses into shrieking chaos. Your father yells, and you all scatter like chickens, the scent of sanctity replaced by muddy feet and guilt. Scholars debate how children really felt about church in the Middle Ages. Was it awe-inspiring, terrifying, mind-numbing, probably all three? For you, it's just another part of life, a mix of mystery and monotony, full of strange beauty and heavy silences. You don't question its truth. You don't question much at all. Questioning is for people with choices, and you don't have many of those yet. Tonight, as you fall asleep, the scent of incense still clings to your tunic. You whisper one of the prayers you learned, just in case. Not because you fully believe, but because you've seen enough to know that it can't hurt. And in this world, with everything stacked against you, sometimes superstition is the only thing you can carry with you into sleep. Your mouth hurts again, a deep, throbbing kind of hurt that pulses through your jaw and up into your temple. You've tried ignoring it, chewing on the left side only, grinding your teeth less, sucking on bits of cloth, but nothing helps. You wake in the night with tears drying on your face and your fingers jammed into your mouth like maybe you can pull the pain out yourself. You can't. Your teeth are rotting and no one's surprised. You're around 8 now, which in medieval years is just old enough to have the full set of baby teeth replaced by the adult versions, and already have a few of those rot away. Dental hygiene, as you might imagine, isn't really a thing. No toothbrushes, no toothpaste, no floss, mouthwash, or urgent dentist visits. You clean your teeth the same way you do everything else, with a rag, a bit of salt and prayer, maybe chew on some mint leaves or rub them with ash, maybe not. Sugar is rare, but bread is daily and it's coarse, ground with millstones that leave grit in the flour, so you're basically sandpapering your enamel with every bite. Add to that the occasional meaty gristle, sour wine, or roasted root you never quite chew properly, and your teeth don't stand a chance. There's a brown spot on your left molar now, a sure sign of decay. When the pain hits, it comes fast. Sharp, hot, then dull and endless. Your breath smells awful. Not that anyone notices. Everyone's breath smells like wet sheep and last year's garlic. You've seen your uncle spit blood into the hearth after a bad chew. One of your older cousins had a tooth pulled last winter, and you still remember the scream. The blacksmith did it, of all people, because he had the strongest arms and the right kind of pliers. There was no numbing, no clean instruments, just a child pinned down in the snow and a yank that echoed through the whole village. You're not ready for that. Not yet. So you say nothing about your tooth. You just wince and chew slowly and try not to make eye contact when anyone mentions aches. But the swelling in your jaw is getting worse. Your cheek looks puffy. If it spreads to your eye, someone will notice. And then it'll be the blacksmith, or the knife, or something worse. There's no dentist, no trained medical professional with tools in a neat tray and a gentle voice asking how you're feeling. What you get instead is a collection of herbal knowledge passed down through generations and mixed liberally with superstition. Your grandmother might suggest a poultice of mashed onions and vinegar pressed to your cheek. It burns and smells like rot, but you hold it there because it's better than nothing. Another neighbour swears by clove oil, which you don't have, or hot ale, which you do, but it makes your stomach lurch. A truly charming medieval remedy for toothaches involves stuffing the cavity with dried frog brains. Another recommends catching a mouse, grinding its bones into powder and rubbing that into your gums. You have no idea whether anyone really did this, but the fact that it's been written down by someone in a monastery somewhere means it probably happened. Desperate people try anything. If your family is poor, and yes, they are, you don't get fancy solutions. You get the basic stuff. Chew on willow bark, it dulls pain, a natural form of aspirin. Suck on salt, rub mud into your skin and hope it draws the fever out. Sometimes your mother will light a candle for you at church and make you stand close to it, as if the holy flame will burn the sickness away. You whisper prayers through clenched teeth, hoping your voice doesn't tremble too much. Meanwhile, life continues. You still have chores. Still have to carry water, herd chickens, haul wood. You walk around with one side of your face frozen in a half grimace, trying not to cry when cold air hits your exposed tooth. You sleep badly, dreaming colours that make no sense, and wake up each morning with your jaw locked and your eyes wet. And then, one morning, the pain is suddenly gone. You wake up, gingerly bite into a crust of bread, and realise there's no sharp stab, no ache. You think it's a miracle until you taste something coppery. You spit. A tooth falls out. Whole, black at the root. You stare at it in your palm, fascinated and horrified. It feels too big to have lived in your head. You wipe your mouth, and for a moment you feel proud, like you've survived something, like you've outlasted it, and in a way you have. You show the tooth to your mother, and she shrugs. Give it to the fire, she says, or the rats will take it and you'll get more pain. So you toss it into the hearth and watch it disappear into the embers, imagining the pain burning with it. Later that day your jaw aches again, but not as badly, and the hole where the tooth once was becomes your tongue's new obsession. Children in your village don't keep their teeth. There's no pillow, no coin from the tooth fairy. Teeth are reminders of rot, of sickness, of what the body does when it breaks down. You learn not to get attached to them. You expect them to fall out, turn black, split in half. It's just a matter of time. Fringe historical fact. Medieval people believed toothaches were sometimes caused by toothworms, tiny, invisible creatures that burrowed into your molars and fed off your enamel. Some remedies involved trying to smoke out these worms using burned herbs or incense funneled into the mouth. You haven't tried that one, yet. Scholars today are fascinated by medieval dental practices, mostly because they were a chaotic blend of herbal wisdom, utter nonsense, and trial by suffering. Archaeological remains show plenty of abscesses, broken teeth, and even makeshift fillings using beeswax or linen. There's evidence of extractions done with terrifying tools. But you're not part of a study. You're just trying to get through the day without weeping into your soup. And the worst part, this won't be the last tooth. You've got a whole mouth full of them, and each one is a ticking clock. Tonight you lie near the fire, jaw sore, mouth bitter with blood. You curl on your side, pressing your cheek to the warmth, and whisper a prayer. Not to Saint Apollonia, the patron saint of dentistry, you don't know her name yet, but to anyone who's listening. To the fire, to the saints, to your own teeth. Please, just let the next one fall out clean. By now you've figured out that the animals around you are not your friends. They are not cute. They do not want to be petted. In fact, most of them are just barely domesticated piles of attitude with hooves, teeth, and an intense desire to knock you over for fun. You've learned to walk carefully around pigs. Never behind, never too close. Pigs don't just squeal and oink. They charge, they bite. They'll eat anything that doesn't move fast enough, including you. No one sugarcoats it. Don't fall near the pig pen is as common a warning as mind the fire. Both can kill you, and both have. Chickens seem harmless until you've tried to collect eggs under the squawk of an enraged hen. You still have a scar on your forearm from the last time you tried. Geese are worse, meaner, louder, with the cold calculation of an animal that knows you're scared and enjoys it. You're 8, maybe almost 9, and geese still make you back away slowly like you've stumbled into a bad part of town. Your job now includes regular help with livestock. Not the heavy stuff yet. That's still your father or the older boy's territory. But the daily care, feeding, cleaning, chasing strays back into pens. You're the eyes and legs of the operation, sent running after whatever animal has broken through the fence this time. You've spent many a morning knee-deep in mud, or worse, trying to lead a goat back home with nothing but a stick and a trail of wilted greens. You muck out stalls now, too. That means scooping, shoveling and hauling piles of manure with hands that haven't known softness in years. The stench clings to your skin. No matter how much you scrub with ash, it never fully goes away. You smell like animals. So does everyone else. You learn to live with it. Slaughter days are complicated. You're old enough to help now, not with the actual cutting, though some kids your age do, but with the setup. Fetch the water, hold the legs, clean the knife afterward. The first time you see it, you think you're going to vomit. The sounds, the way the pig screams like a person, the warm, dark flood onto the straw. Your stomach flips, but no one gives you time to panic. Don't flinch, someone says. It just makes it worse. You learn to hold your breath and watch the life drain away. You're told to be grateful. This meat will feed your family for days. It's a gift. It's a blessing. And it's also horrifying in a way you can't fully explain. You stare at the pig's eyes afterward, wide and glassy, and you wonder if it knew, if it hated you. You dream about it that night. Dream it's talking, asking why. You wake up in a sweat, still smelling the blood. Next time it's a chicken, easier, quicker, but somehow worse. You hold its feet while your brother pulls its head back and swings the blade. The body twitches in your hands after it's dead, feathers ruffling with phantom movement. You scream the first time. Everyone laughs. You don't scream again. There's no escape from it. Animals are food, labour, heat, clothing. You wear their sins, drink their milk, eat their flesh, scrape your knees on their bones when you fall in the yard. They are woven into your life. They are also unpredictable. A cow with a sore hoof kicks sideways and nearly breaks your leg. A horse bites a chunk out of your sleeve. A rooster attacks your face for stepping too close. You learn where to walk, how to approach, when to shout and when to whisper. Fringe fact. In some parts of medieval Europe, animals could be put on trial. That's right. A pig that killed a child might actually be tried in a human court, sentenced and executed, often publicly. People believed in justice, even when it involved livestock. You don't see a trial like that in your village, but you hear stories. One about a goat who was hanged, another about a rooster buried alive for laying an egg. You're not sure if any of it's true, but it doesn't sound that strange, honestly. There's no clear line between animals as property and animals as beings. You're not sentimental about them, not exactly, but you do name them sometimes. A sheep with crooked legs becomes Benny. A skinny cow with one horn is Old Laura. You whisper to them when no one's around, talk about the weather, tell them secrets. It feels safer than telling people. They don't talk back and they won't gossip. You once tried to keep a kitten. It showed up one morning, half-starved, crying in the hay. You named it. Fed it scraps. Hid it in your sleeve. Your mother found it, rolled her eyes, and said, "It'll be gone by morning." It wasn't. It lasted a week. Then it disappeared and no one said a word. You asked, and your father just said, "There's too many mouths already." You cried quietly into your pillow of bundled straw that night and haven't tried to keep anything since. Scholarship on medieval attitudes toward animals is full of contradictions. Some manuscripts describe beasts as tools, soulless and expendable. Others show affection, even companionship. Dogs buried with owners, horses given names and blessings. You see both in your world. The ox is slapped and praised in the same breath. The cat is cursed and fed from someone's hand. There's love, but it's not tender. It's survival. Today you chase a runaway goat through half the village. It bolts, you follow. You trip, scrape your knee, curse out loud and hear a priest gasp from behind a wall. The goat finally stops in a patch of thistle. You grab it by the horns, breathing hard, and feel something between rage and relief. You lead it home, bleeding from your shin, muddy to the knees, and when your mother sees you, she just nods. Didn't think you'd catch it. You say nothing. You're too tired. The goat stares at you like it knows something you don't. Maybe it does. That night you sit by the fire, your clothes steaming dry. Your hands smell like hay and blood. You dream again of the pig, but this time it says nothing. It just watches. Dinner in your house is not a meal. It's a scramble. There's no come and get it, or slow procession to a cosy table with candles and napkins. It's closer to a street brawl with spoons. You're 9 now, and by this point you've mastered the essential medieval dinner skills: elbow sharpness, spoon speed, and the delicate art of getting your fair share without making eye contact with someone bigger than you. Survival isn't about strength, it's about tactics. Meals are communal, chaotic, and painfully simple. Everything, your siblings, your parents, maybe even a cousin or two who never left, is huddled around a single bowl or pot, steaming, hopefully, in the centre of the room. Your entire nutritional future for the next 24 hours is resting in that chipped wooden vessel. There is no who's hungry, just the sound of slurping, grunting, scraping, and maybe a whisper of prayer if your mother has the energy. And what's in the bowl? Pottage, most likely. Always pottage. The ever-present medieval stew of boiled grains, root vegetables, sometimes lentils, and occasionally a precious shred of meat or a greasy bone with flavour still clinging to it. This isn't soup. It's edible paste seasoned with salt if you have it, or a wilted herb if someone remembered. Every now and then you catch a surprise, like a lump of barley, a turnip chunk, or something mysterious that tastes a little too chewy. Bread is the main backup plan. Coarse, grey, often stale, and filled with tiny flecks of grit from the grindstone. You gnaw at it carefully. Everyone in your house has prematurely ground down teeth, and you've learned to chew on the side that hurts less. The younger children drool on their crusts, gumming them into mush. You used to do that too. Now you just chew slowly and hope no one notices how much your jaw aches again. Eating is fast. The second food hits the bowl, spoons attack. There is no second round, no seconds period. Everyone gets what they can grab. You learn to scoop deep and fast, to tilt the bowl slightly in your direction, to protect your portion with the full radius of your elbows. Even when it's just broth, you fight for it. Hunger doesn't make people kind, it makes them strategic. Your younger brother once dropped his spoon and tried to reach in with his hand. Your father slapped him so hard he fell backward. "We're not pigs," he said unironically, while eating from a bowl he was sharing with 5 other people. No one laughed. You all understood. Manners matter, even when dignity left the building years ago. Sometimes you get a bit of cheese, not the creamy, happy kind that melts and stretches. No, this cheese is hard and salty, more weapon than delicacy. It's usually cracked at the edge, mould growing in the creases. You cut around it if you're fancy, otherwise you just chew and hope your body doesn't argue about it later. Holidays are the only times you see real meat. Maybe a salted fish, maybe a hen who finally stopped laying eggs and met her end in a pot. You look forward to those days like modern children look forward to birthdays. Roasted anything feels like a dream. Even the bones become toys afterward, chewed, sharpened, collected in piles behind the hearth. You eat off of wooden trenchers, sometimes just the table itself, and bowls are passed down, spoons are shared. You've seen your sister use her spoon for stew, then her mouth, then the fire poking, then stew again. You don't care. Clean is a concept for nobles. You're just happy the spoon still exists. Water isn't your first drink option, small beer is. Mildly alcoholic, often warm and slightly sour, it's the safest fluid available. The river? Full of things better left unmentioned. Your beer is thin, brown and tastes vaguely like wheat-flavoured regret, but it won't kill you. Probably, on feast days, you might get cider. On rare occasions, a sip of wine that makes your face twist. You don't know why adults like it so much. Then again, adults also like turnips. One odd fact you once overheard during a harvest meal. Some people believe eating too much rabbit will make you timid. Eating too much beef? Too aggressive. Lentils, they say, cause melancholy. No one in your family bothers with this philosophy. If it's edible, it's holy. No one eats enough of anything to worry about personality-altering side effects. Though your brother has been weird ever since that squirrel stew. There's no fixed time for meals. You eat when there's food. Sometimes twice a day, sometimes once. If the weather's bad or the harvest is late, the bowl gets thinner. Everyone's quieter on those days. No yelling, no teasing, just the slow, wet sound of a single turnip being stirred into a pot with too much water. Scholars often write about the communal dining culture of the Middle Ages, noting how meals brought families together and reinforced social bonds. Sure, that's technically true, you're definitely together. In the sense that you're all breathing on each other and elbowing ribs to get the last shred of cabbage. But the only thing being reinforced is how badly you want your own bowl someday. You fantasize about food sometimes, not in some abstract, poetic way, in a very specific, detailed way, a loaf of fresh bread, a bowl of porridge with 2 spoonfuls of honey, a roasted apple you don't have to share. You once dreamt of a whole chicken. You woke up drooling into your straw pillow. Tonight's meal is the usual, pottage with a weird aftertaste and 2 small hunks of bread. Your mother serves it with a grim set to her jaw, her sleeves rolled up and her knuckles scraped from grinding flour on a borrowed stone. She doesn't eat yet. She waits, watches. When your father finishes, then she scrapes the bottom of the pot for what's left. That's the rule. Adults eat last, if at all. You finish, belly half full, then sit near the fire with your bowl tucked in your lap. You run your finger along the rim to catch the last drips. Tomorrow there might be more, or less. Depends on the weather, the rats, the moods of the animals, the gods. You don't think about it too hard. Hunger is always waiting, patient as a saint. But tonight at least you've eaten. You have known for years that the forest is not your friend. It watches, it listens, it waits. From the edge of the barley fields you can see the tree line, dense, dark, tangled with branches like crooked fingers. There are stories whispered around the hearth, ones that start with, "Don't tell your mother I said this," and end with someone never coming back. You are 9 now, maybe 10, and you have finally been sent to the edge alone. Not far, just to collect firewood. Everyone makes it sound simple. Go in, gather branches, come back. But it never feels simple. The moment you step off the worn path, the air changes. It gets quieter, thicker. The trees seem to lean closer, as if to listen. You keep your eyes on the ground, pretending you're just here for twigs, but your shoulders stay tight, your breath shallow. The forest has a smell. Wet leaves, rot, And something else, something old, the kind of scent that makes you feel like you're walking into someone else's house without knocking. You try not to crunch too loudly. You don't want to wake anything. A squirrel darts across your path and you nearly drop your bundle of sticks. You curse under your breath and glance around, nervous. Even your voice feels like a trespass here. You're not the only one who fears the woods. Your mother won't go near them unless it's absolutely necessary. She crosses herself when she talks about them. Things live in there, she says, usually with a sideways glance at the window. Not wolves, though those exist too. Not bears, which are rare but possible. No, other things. Spirits, she says, and with teeth. Women with no faces. Men with goat legs. Creatures that feed on lost children and pride. Which is why every step into the forest feels like a gamble. You gather your firewood as quickly as you can, snatching dead limbs from the underbrush, avoiding anything that looks freshly broken. You've been told never to take from a living tree. They remember, your grandmother once said, and they don't like thieves. You've never seen a spirit, not really, but you've seen strange things. A tree with a hollow shaped like a mouth, a ring of mushrooms too perfect to be natural. Once, a goat wandered into the woods and came back 3 days later with eyes that didn't look quite right. Your uncle butchered it the same afternoon, said it smelled wrong. No one ate the meat. The idea of getting lost in the woods is always just beneath your thoughts. There are no signs, no paths, unless you count the animal trails that lead to places you don't want to go. If you take the wrong turn, you might wander in circles for hours, or forever. The trees twist, landmarks disappear, and even the sun seems to lie about which way is east. You keep your bundle light and your route simple. In and out, that's the goal. Fringe medieval belief? Some people thought the forest had guardians, not saints, not spirits, something older. They called them green men, wild men, forest fathers, faces hidden in the bark. Watchers. Some said they were protectors, others said they were punishers. You don't pray to them exactly, but you might nod to the oldest tree as you pass, just in case. There are rules about the forest, and you know them all. Never whistle, never call someone's name. Don't step into a circle of mushrooms. Don't pick the blue flowers. Don't follow the lights, especially if they dance, and if you hear music, run. No questions, just run. Still, you return. Every few days someone has to go in. For firewood, for herbs, for mushrooms. Your mother sends you now because you're old enough and expendable. You're strong enough to carry, but not yet skilled enough to help with livestock or spinning. The woods are a test. If you can do this, maybe you're ready for more. Sometimes you go in with friends, you dare each other to go deeper. You throw rocks into shadowy clearings, and then sprint away. You joke loudly about the tooth witches and the mud men until one of you gets quiet and says, "Did you hear that?" Then you all go silent, straining your ears, and the game ends. You always leave faster than you entered. Not every forest story ends in horror. There are tales of healing too, of wise women who live deep inside, making salves and potions from roots no one else dares to touch. Of lost children who were raised by foxes or taught songs by the trees. You want those stories to be true. You want there to be kindness somewhere in the green, but you've never seen it. You don't have a map. No one does. The forest is always shifting, roots moving, trees falling, rivers changing course. There's a part of it no one enters, the deep woods. Your grandfather once said that anyone who reaches the deep woods doesn't come back a person. They come back something else, or not at all. And still the village depends on it. For wood, for meat, for rare herbs that keep the winter cough from turning into death. So you walk the line between need and fear, between caution and foolishness. You never whistle. You never take more than you need. And when you leave, you never look back, just in case something is following. Scholars might say that medieval fears of the forest were projections, manifestations of social anxiety, hunger and the unknown. But those scholars weren't standing knee-deep in leaves, surrounded by silence so thick it feels like cloth, carrying firewood and prayers in equal measure. They weren't 9 years old, alone, hearing a twig snap behind them. Today, you make it out without incident. Your arms full of sticks, your breath short, your eyes scanning every branch. You drop the bundle near the hearth and your mother says, "You were gone a while." You nod, say nothing. There's mud on your ankles and something under your nails that looks like moss but isn't. You eat quietly and sleep restlessly, dream of trees with faces. The village festival begins like every other ordinary day, with smoke, sweat and someone yelling. You wake up to your mother shouting for someone to grind the rest of the oats, and your father already gone, dragged off to the church green to help raise the poles. You blink sleep from your eyes, scratch at a flea bite, and remember, today is different. Not because things will be easier, but because the day will come with music and masks and, if you're lucky, onions fried in fat. Festivals in the Middle Ages are loud, messy, and vaguely sacred. Maybe it's a saint's day, or the feast of a martyr you've never heard of, or just an excuse to take a break between harvests, but nobody really needs a reason. After weeks of mud and work and watching your neighbours slowly rot from the inside out, you'll take any excuse to smear ash on your face, wear your shirt backward, and cheer while someone hits a wooden barrel with a stick. You're almost 10 now, old enough to be part of the festivities, but still young enough to be made the fool. Literally. One of the village elders presses a floppy hat onto your head and calls you Jester's brat for the day. Everyone laughs, you bow with as much exaggerated drama as you can muster, and secretly you love it. The day is a sensory overload. You smell roasting onions, sour ale, the sharp tang of sheep dung and incense all tangled in the air like a confused blessing. Someone's playing a pipe, badly, but no one cares. The beat is fast, wild, impossible not to dance to. People stomp in circles, clap their hands, shout words you don't understand. You join in, spinning until your tunic flaps like a flag and your head buzzes. The masks come out next. Some are simple, painted wood with eye holes. Others are terrifying. One man wears a goat's skull tied to his face with string. A woman walks by with her face painted white and red streaks dripping from her mouth. Younger children cry. You don't. You're fascinated. These aren't just disguises, they're a transformation. People become beasts, saints, devils. For one day everything gets turned upside down. There's a man in a donkey costume with a tail that smacks people as he dances by. You try to dodge it, but he catches your leg anyway, and the crowd roars with laughter. You pretend to limp dramatically, and are immediately pelted with bits of bread crust and a turnip. This is somehow part of the fun. You throw the turnip back and hit the donkey man square in the side. He hoots in approval and chases you through the crowd. Your lungs ache from laughter. Later, someone climbs the maypole. Not for decoration, for sport. There's a prize at the top, a small purse of coins, or more likely a bundle of smoked fish wrapped in cloth. You watch boys twice your age scrape their way up, their hands slick with grease someone has thoughtfully smeared all over the pole. No one makes it all the way, but everyone cheers anyway. You imagine climbing it yourself one day, tall and strong, with the crowd shouting your name. But it's not all joy. There's a darker edge to everything, a bite beneath the laughter. During the ritual beating, a group of young men with willow switches chase through the village, striking people, not hard, but not gently either. It's supposed to be symbolic. Some say it drives out bad spirits. Others say it's just old tradition, from back when festivals were meant to wake the earth, stir the blood, keep winter at bay. You get caught once, just a flick across the back of your legs, but it stings more than you expected. You laugh anyway, because that's what you're supposed to do. Then comes the puppet show. You've seen it before, but it's always different. The stage is nothing more than a few crates and a sheet, the puppets crude wood and cloth, but the stories are wild. One minute it's St. George killing the dragon, the next it's a chicken arguing with death over a missing egg. The puppet voices are high-pitched and shrill. The crowd roars. Someone next to you throws a radish at the dragon's head. It bounces off and the puppet falls over. This is apparently the funniest thing that has ever happened. You laugh until your ribs ache. You eat fried onions wrapped in a crust of barley dough. Greasy, chewy, so hot they burn your tongue. Worth it. Later, someone hands you a chunk of smoked eel. You chew it slowly, savouring the salt, trying to make it last. This is the most food you've had in a single day in weeks, maybe months. And then, as the sun dips low, comes the oddest part of all, the mock trial. A local man is dragged onto the stage, accused of something absurd, stealing the moon, talking to chickens, kissing the miller's wife, pleads innocence with dramatic flair, wearing a donkey mask now, the crowd booing and laughing in equal measure. He's found guilty, of course. They tie him to a cart and roll him through the village, singing rude songs and tossing flower petals at him. It's half jest, half warning. The village knows how to laugh, but it never fully forgets how to punish. Fringe fact. In some parts of Europe, festivals involved ritual fools who were treated like kings for a day, given mock power, paraded around, then symbolically dethroned or even beaten to restore order. Some historians believe these roles allowed people to release tension, mock authority, and explore the edge of rebellion, just enough to keep society intact. You don't think in terms of symbolism, you just see people dancing with fire, chanting in circles, shouting blessings and curses as if they're the same thing. You feel like you've stepped into another world, one where rules bend, where faces change, where even the priest wears a grin and drinks too much. But even this day has to end. The sun slips down behind the trees and the music slows. The fire still burns, but people start to wander home, feet dragging, laughter fading into coughs. You walk back to your hut barefoot, your legs sore, your stomach strangely full. Night, the village feels different. Looser, worn out in a good way. You curl up near the hearth, your skin still warm from dancing, your ears ringing with drumbeats and laughter. For one day the world felt less sharp, less grey, more alive. Tomorrow you'll wake up and it'll be mud again, work again, hunger. But for now your dreams are full of masks and firelight, and for once that doesn't scare you. You don't remember the fire starting, you only remember the screaming. It begins with the sharp crack of something snapping, wood or bone you can't tell, and then someone outside is shouting your father's name. You blink awake, still tangled in your blanket, and realise the air smells wrong. Not just smoke, burnt, hot and urgent, like the time a goose caught fire in the kitchen, but louder, bigger, super, everywhere. By the time you're upright, the smoke is thick enough to sting your eyes. You hear feet pounding outside, dogs barking, someone shouting for water, and your mother yelling for everyone to get out, get out, get out. You crawl across the floor, coughing, dragging your little sister behind you. The straw mattress is already smouldering at the edges. The wall is glowing red. You don't even grab your shoes. Outside, the night is full of orange light and panic. Half the village is up, buckets in hand, forming a shaky line from the well. You stand barefoot in the mud, mouth open, watching the neighbour's roof collapse inward like a punctured lung. Sparks rise into the sky like a swarm of angry fireflies. The smell is choking wood, fat, wet wool, and one is sobbing. One else is laughing, wild and high-pitched, too far gone to help. The fire spreads quickly. Most of the houses are made of timber, thatch and dreams. There's no fire break, no stone foundations, nothing but wet rags slapped against walls and prayers shouted at the sky. You try to help, running buckets from the well to your house, but you can barely lift them. The water sloshes out before you make it halfway. You're pushed aside, patted on the head, told to go stay with the other children. But you don't. You just keep running, your skin stinging from heat, your heart pounding like a drumbeat from inside your throat. Eventually your house is saved. Barely. The fire didn't start there, but it crept close enough to blacken the walls and turn the chimney into a leaning column of cracked stone. The neighbour's house is gone, though. The family, 5 people, stand in their nightclothes covered in soot, looking like ghosts who forgot how to vanish. One of the children is still crying. The youngest hasn't spoken. No one says anything comforting. They just keep standing there, like maybe if they stare hard enough the house will reassemble itself from ash. In the morning the damage is worse than it looked. 3 homes are gone. The mill's roof has collapsed. The well is dry. Someone's cow ran off during the commotion and hasn't returned. And everything smells, like burned cloth, like boiled stone, like something final. You help clear the wreckage, stepping over broken beams and melted pots. The heat is gone now, but it left behind a kind of silence that nothing seems able to break. Fires aren't uncommon. Every village knows the risk. An untended hearth, a tipped candle, a child knocking over a lantern. In winter, everyone crams in closer to the fire for warmth. In summer, the thatched roofs turn to tinder. 1 spark is enough. There are no fire codes, no sand buckets at the ready, no fire department coming to save you. Just people, half asleep, tossing water and shouting prayers. Your father once told you about a town a few valleys over that burned to the ground. Not one building left. Everyone just left. Or died. That story used to seem distant, almost unreal. Now it feels like something brushing the back of your neck. You look around your own home, scorched but standing. The door's been patched with scrap wood, the roof still leaks, the floor's still crooked. But it's here, and you suddenly feel very, very protective of it. You start checking the hearth twice a night. You guard the candles like they're loaded weapons. You wake at the slightest creak, convinced the fire has come back. One fringe belief says fire is a punishment, not from God, but from the house itself. That if a home is mistreated, Left dirty, disrespected, it calls down flame to cleanse itself. Some people spit into the hearth before bed to keep it pacified. Others whisper apologies into the embers. You don't know if you believe that, but you find yourself muttering to the fire anyway, just in case. The village rebuilds slowly. The men raise new frames. The women weave fresh mats. Everyone lends what they can. Tools, cloth, hands, but no one has much. There are no donations coming in from the next village. No relief wagons, just long days and longer nights and burned fingers. One morning the priest visits the ruins. He prays, sprinkles holy water, leaves a wooden cross in the ash. He doesn't say much, just looks at what's left, nods once and leaves. You wonder if even he's run out of answers. Scholars love to study medieval fires. They read the records, the court accounts, the letters written by clerics complaining about another town burned down. But none of that captures the moment you look down and realise you left your shoes behind in a burning house, that you can't go back for them, that the fire doesn't care how cold the ground is tomorrow. For the next week the village is quieter. People speak softly, no one scolds the children, no one sings at night. Even the animals seem subdued, their hooves muffled, their eyes twitchy and wary. It's like the whole place is holding its breath, waiting to see if the fire really left. But life resumes. It always does. The bread still has to be baked. The goats still need milking. You still have to fetch water and hope the new roof doesn't collapse in the next rain. People laugh again, eventually, but it's a different kind of laugh, tired, lighter, like something small trying to float. Tonight you sit near the newly rebuilt hearth. The fire crackles softly. You poke it with a stick just once, then set the stick aside, carefully. You lie down, straw crackling under your bones, and watch the shadows on the ceiling. They look like flames, and for the first time in days you let yourself fall asleep. Winter doesn't arrive all at once, it seeps in. First the wind turns colder, sharper, like it's had enough of being polite. Then the ground stiffens under your bare feet, each morning harder to walk across than the last. Your breath starts coming out in clouds, and even the animals look offended by the temperature. Eventually the sun stops trying. It rises late, sets early, and in between it just hovers, grey and distant, like it's watching you shiver, and doesn't feel especially motivated to help. This is the season you dread the most. Hunger is one thing, cold is another, but both together, that's when people start dying. You've already heard about 2 elders in the next village who didn't make it through the last frost. One was found frozen in bed, arms crossed like she'd decided it wasn't worth getting up. The other they found outside in the snow, eyes wide open. People say he was chasing a chicken. You're not sure whether that part's true, but it makes the story easier to bear. Your home, if we're being generous, is mostly wind with a roof. The walls are wood patched with mud and straw. Your family does what it can, stuffing every crack with rags, stacking straw along the cold side, hanging cloth over the door. But the cold gets in anyway. It seeps up through the floorboards, down through the ceiling, sideways through the gaps in the walls. Your breath fogs even when you're inside, and your fingers feel numb before you've buttoned your tunic. There's no fireplace, not really, just a hearth, an open pit in the middle of the floor, with smoke curling upwards toward a hole in the roof that sometimes works as a chimney. If the wind's wrong, the smoke comes right back in. You all sit around it, blinking, coughing, eyes red, huddled together like potatoes in a sack. Someone's always feeding it. Little twigs, bits of dried dung, anything that burns. Firewood is precious. You went into the forest to collect it all autumn. It still won't be enough. You wear every layer you own. 2 shirts, a ragged cloak, trousers with holes that let the breeze flirt with your knees, socks that were once someone else's. On the worst days you sleep with your shoes on, not because they're warm, they're not, but because if you take them off the leather might freeze and crack, or someone might borrow them while you sleep. The cold isn't just outside, it gets into your bones. Your knees ache, your fingers swell, your teeth chatter, no matter how tightly you curl. You sleep pressed against your siblings, arms and legs tangled, breath warming each other's necks. When one of you turns over, everyone turns, like a school of fish, but grumpier and constantly fighting over who stole the blanket. You eat less in winter. Everyone does. The stores dwindle, no matter how carefully your mother tried to ration the root vegetables. You've got turnips, maybe some barley, dried beans that take forever to cook, salted fish if you're lucky, but mostly pottage. Again, only now it's watery and grey and sometimes has bits of bark in it. which no one discusses. You chew them like you meant to. Fresh food is a memory. No eggs. The hens are barely alive. Huddled in corners of the coop like sad little statues. No milk either. Cows don't produce much when they're cold and half-starved. So you make do. Bread that's more chew than crumb, stew that is mostly broth. You sip slowly, savouring every lukewarm mouthful, knowing it might be hours before you taste anything else. You get sick, of course. Everyone does. Winter brings coughs like curses, spreading from one person to another. There's a damp hacking sound in the air that never quite stops. Your little sister has had it for weeks. You can see the weight falling off her face getting thinner, her voice quieter. Your mother rubs her chest with goose fat and murmurs prayers. But you know what that cough means. You've heard it before, too many times. Quirky belief? Some people sleep with onions under their bed to ward off winter illnesses. Others believe wearing a bit of garlic on a string can protect your lungs. You've tried both. You still got sick, but at least you smelled confident about it. You're constantly tired. The cold drains you. You wake stiff, every joint arguing with you. Your feet crack and bleed. Your lips chap and scab. And the worst part? There's no escape. No warm bath. No fluffy blanket. No corner of your home where the cold hasn't made itself king. You go to bed shivering. You wake up shivering. The only thing that changes is how long your nose takes to thaw. There's a scholar somewhere, probably wrapped in furs beside a roaring fire, who once wrote that medieval winters brought communities closer together, that shared hardship fostered resilience. Sure, it also fostered death, frostbite, and the smell of feet. But yes, you suppose you're closer. There's no privacy in winter. You're packed like dried fish, sharing everything, space, breath, lice. Your only real joy comes in strange bursts. Someone makes a joke that actually lands, and the whole room wheezes with laughter. Your brother farts during mass, and your father nearly breaks trying not to laugh. The cat curls up on your lap, and for 10 whole minutes you're warm enough to forget how miserable your toes are. Sometimes someone plays music. Not much. Just a lute with 2 working strings or a whistle carved from bone. The tunes are simple, repetitive and little more than rhythmic noise. But in the dark it sounds like magic. You close your eyes and let it carry you somewhere that isn't cold. Somewhere that doesn't smell like damp straw and cooked turnip. At night you lie there waiting for sleep to come. You wiggle your fingers just to prove they still move. You breathe shallowly, trying not to cough. Outside the wind moans like something in pain. The walls creak, the fire sighs, and you whisper a tiny prayer, not even to God, just to anyone, that tomorrow, maybe, will be warmer. But you already know it won't be. It starts with a small red bump. You scratch it absent-mindedly while hauling a basket of firewood, thinking it's just another flea bite, one more in a constellation already dotting your skin. But this one itches differently, deeper. By nightfall, the bump has swelled, hot and tender, like something beneath the surface is waiting to burst. Your mother notices when you're shifting too much near the fire. She doesn't say anything at first, just narrows her eyes and tells you to keep your hands out of your armpits. The next morning there's another, and your head is heavy, and your joints ache like you've aged 50 years overnight. You try to get up, but the ground tilts and your vision fades at the edges. You sit back down and suddenly, everyone is quiet. The moment has come, the one every medieval child is warned about but secretly thinks they'll avoid. The sickness. It's not the first time illness has passed through your village. You've lived through cough seasons, through boils and fevers and those weird rashes that everyone pretends aren't serious until someone dies. But this is different. This is the one they whisper about, the one that travels in silence and shadow, that turns strong men to bone in days and children to corpses overnight. People call it the pestilence, the plague, God's punishment, and the priest once called it a divine scouring. You're not interested in the vocabulary, you just want it gone. Within 2 days you're flat on your back, too weak to sit up. Your limbs tremble, your stomach turd at the smell of broth. The swellings under your arms are enormous now, black in the centre, ringed with purple, as if your body is rotting from the inside. Your mother keeps trying to sponge you with water and vinegar. It stings. You don't complain, you can barely talk. They separate you from the others. You're moved to a corner of the hut, your straw mat pulled away from the rest, a curtain of old wool hung to keep in your sickness, or keep it out. Your little sister cries when she sees you go. Your brother looks guilty for not being sick. You can't tell whether you're hot or cold anymore. Your skin is both, shifting from burning to freezing with every heartbeat. There's no doctor, no trained healer. The woman who usually helps with childbirths and broken bones won't come near you. She leaves a bundle of herbs at the door, then backs away with her hand over her mouth. Brew that, she calls to your mother, and pray. Everyone keeps telling your mother to pray. You think she might be doing it constantly now. You hear her muttering under her breath even while stirring the pot. Fringe fact, part one medieval cure for plague involved cutting a live pigeon open and laying it on the swelling. The belief was that the bird would draw out the sickness, absorbing the poison like a sponge. You have no pigeon, just a poultice of onions and vinegar that makes your skin reek and your eyes water. Your mother applies it anyway, hands shaking. On the third night you start hallucinating. You see shapes dancing on the ceiling, though there's no light. You hear voices that aren't in the room, your grandfather's voice, who's been dead for a year now, telling you to come outside. You don't move, you can't, even your bones hurt. The fever breaks on the fifth night. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe you just drift into a deeper sleep, and when you wake, you're soaked in sweat and your vision is clear for the first time in days. You can lift your hand, you can speak, you whisper for water, and your mother almost drops the cup she's holding. You're alive, not better, not healed. The swelling is still there, but smaller now, and your skin has stopped glowing like a blacksmith's forge. Your mouth tastes like mildew. You've lost weight. You can feel your ribs when you move, but the others in your house are still breathing. No one else has fallen sick, not yet. By the end of the week, you're walking again, barefoot, bent, slow as an old man. Everyone keeps looking at you like you've risen from the grave. The priest visits and blesses your bed. The midwife finally comes in and checks your arms. You'll live, she says, almost disappointed. For now. You hear about the others. A boy from 3 huts down didn't make it. The baker's wife is burning with fever. Someone's uncle was buried yesterday in a hole not even deep enough to keep the dogs out. The village has started digging pits. Plural. There aren't enough coffins for what's coming. Historians still debate what it actually was. Plague, typhoid, ergot poisoning from mouldy rye. There are arguments about bacteria and fleas, rats and shipping routes, but you don't care about the science. All you know is that something moved through your village like smoke through cracks, and it left behind silence. In the weeks that follow, life doesn't go back to normal. Not really. People keep their distance, doors stay shut, children are told to stay home. The church is packed with people begging for salvation. The ones who survive are marked, not physically, though your armpits still have angry scars, but in how they look at each other, wary, as if wondering who'll be next. You recover slowly. You eat soup that tastes like weeds. You walk with a limp. You wake from nightmares where you can't breathe. But you survived. Not many do. And though no one says it out loud, you feel it in how they treat you, the nods, the strange deference, the space they give you in the line for bread. Like you're something rare, half dead, half sacred. That night you lie on your mat, weak but breathing, and whisper a thank you. To who? You don't know, not to God, you're not sure where he's been lately. Maybe to the fire, or the wind, or your own bones for not giving up, or... You're still here, and that for now is enough. There's something about death that never quite leaves the village. Even when it isn't taking someone, it hovers just outside like smoke that never lifts. You've known death for years now, seen it take infants wrapped in linen, old men stiff in their chairs, animals that collapsed in the fields with steam still rising from their flanks. You've seen death up close, watched it settle in the eyes of your neighbours, listened to your mother whisper prayers over shallow graves, and now, at 10, maybe nearly 11, you understand something most grown-ups won't admit. Death isn't an event. It's part of the schedule. When someone dies, the village follows a rhythm. It's quiet at first. The hut goes still, and you hear soft sobs, or just the sound of breathing, like even grief can't raise its voice. Then word spreads, not by messenger, but through the change in people's eyes. Someone tells someone else while gathering water. A glance is shared, a nod, a name, and soon everyone knows. Today it's old Marta who's died. You remember her mostly by smell, sour milk and peat smoke, and the way she always sat by the church door like a bent question mark. Her fingers were knotted like roots. She gave you a dried apple once. That's enough to make you sad in your own way. The death ritual begins before the body is even cold. The women come first, not the immediate family. They're too stunned, too busy with the silence, but the others. the ones who know what to do. They arrive with cloths and water, beeswax and quiet voices. They undress the body, wash it from head to foot, and wrap it in its best clothes, usually just a slightly less mended tunic and a strip of lace someone's been saving for years. They tie the jaw shut, close the eyes, and cross the hands over the chest. You've never helped, but you've watched through cracks in the wall. It's methodical, gentle, eerie. There's no embalming, no preservation, just speed and care. If it's summer, the body needs to be buried by the next day, faster if the flies start sniffing around. If it's winter, the cold does the job for you. You've heard stories of bodies frozen until the ground thaws enough to dig. No one wants that, not the living, not the dead. The wake is held in the home. Everyone comes, some because they loved her, others because it's what you do. You sit on benches or logs, hands in laps, eyes fixed on the floor. The body lies in the centre, candles burning near the head and feet. If the family has coin, they light incense or scatter herbs to mask the smell. If not, they just open the door and pray for a breeze. You're allowed in, but you don't go too close. You've seen corpses before, but that doesn't mean you like it. Someone starts singing. A dirge, low and slow, like dragging a heavy sack through snow. Others join in, humming or mumbling. The words barely matter. It's the rhythm that counts, the sound of shared sorrow. Sometimes there's bread, occasionally ale. No one eats much, but it's there, like a symbol. Life among the dead. Children are told not to cry too loud, not to make jokes, not to touch the body, but you do once. Just brush your fingers against her sleeve when no one's looking. It's stiff, cold, your skin jumps at the contact. You pull your hand away quickly, heart racing, and go sit near the fire like nothing happened. But you can still feel it. The cold lingers in your fingertips, as if something climbed inside and settled there. Fringe fact. Some believe a corpse can wake if disrespected, sit up, groan, even walk. To prevent this, villagers used to bind the feet, stuff salt in the mouth, or place scissors on the chest to confuse evil spirits. You don't see any scissors today, but you notice a string tied around martyrs' toes. Maybe that's why. The funeral comes at dawn. The men dig the grave, shallow, practical, near the church if the person was liked, farther out if they weren't. There's no headstone, just a cross made from whatever branches weren't too rotten. You march with the others, your breath puffing in the cold, feet crunching over frost-hardened mud. The procession is quiet. No one sings this time. The priest meets you at the edge of the pit, mutters Latin you don't understand, and tosses a handful of dirt onto the wrapped form. Then it's over. The grave is filled slowly and with care. The cross is placed. Some weep, others yawn. Life tugs them back almost immediately. Cows need milking. Bread needs kneading. The world doesn't pause, not even for this. You linger a little longer, not because you were close to martyr, but because something about the spot feels heavy, like it's pressing on the ground. You wonder if she can hear you. If there's anything left to listen, you whisper thank you, for the apple, for the stories, for surviving long enough to teach you what old age looks like. Then you go. Scholars talk about death literacy in medieval life. The idea that people back then were more familiar, more comfortable with mortality. But that's not really it. You're not comfortable. You're just exposed, constantly. Death isn't a philosophical concept, it's a neighbour. Sometimes quiet, sometimes cruel, but always around. Later that night, back at home, you sit by the fire and run your fingers over your own chest. You imagine the candles at your head and feet, the cloth tied around your jaw, the people coming to see you off. You wonder if your sister would cry, if your father would say something kinder, if they'd bury you close or far. It's not morbid, it's just practical. You fall asleep thinking about your own grave. It doesn't feel strange, it feels expected. By now, you've stopped wondering what your life could have been. Dreams of knights, castles, magical tutors and gold coins jingling into your pouch. Those were for younger versions of yourself, back when you still thought the world might surprise you with kindness. Now, at 11, almost 12, you've settled into the dull rhythm of survival. It's not heroism, it's not tragedy. It's just waking up, working until your arms throb, eating what you're given, and hoping tomorrow is no worse than today. Today begins like all others, with your mother calling your name before the sun's even risen, and your feet hitting the dirt floor before your mind catches up. You're sent out to check the coop, and one of the hens is frozen in place overnight. Dead. You pry it loose, stiff as firewood, and bring it in without a word. No one says anything, but you all glance at the stew pot like maybe this is dinner. Probably not. Probably it's as too far gone. There's little school in your life. Most likely you never learned to read. The priest once tried to teach you your letters, but he stopped after your cousin mistook the cross on the page for a sword and called it holy pointy. You learned a few prayers in Latin, enough to mimic the rhythm of the chants, but you couldn't write your own name if you were paid. Not that anyone's offering. Instead, your lessons come through repetition. You know how to recognise when bread dough is too wet. You can set a snare with your eyes closed. You know which part of the pig to salt first and how long it takes to boil a bone until it stops offering anything worth tasting. You've learned to sharpen a blade on stone and mend a cracked bucket, and lie convincingly about whether you've washed your feet. You have calluses in places you didn't know the skin could thicken. Your fingernails are blackened crescents. Your back pops when you bend to lift the water jug, and it stays bent for a moment too long. You feel old, not in a romantic, wise shepherd kind of way, just worn, the way a shoe feels after too many winters. What little time you have for yourself is usually spent watching, sitting near the road, staring at the trees, not thinking exactly, just letting the thoughts come and go. You hum sometimes. No one taught you the songs. They live in the marrow of your bones, carried over from voices long gone. Bits of rhyme, strange melodies that feel older than speech. Once, your brother heard you and said, "That sounds like a ghost tune." You didn't argue. Marriage. It's not even a question of if, just when and to whom. You've seen girls married off at 12, boys promised to farms they've never seen. No romance, just a transaction with slightly more clothing. If you're lucky, your future partner will have teeth, or at least most of them, and a kind streak, or not. You'll adjust either way. The seasons blur now. Winter, mud, planting, sun, harvest, repeat. You don't mark time by calendars. You mark it by animal births, crop failures, and which neighbour lost a child last. Your milestones aren't celebrated with parties but with chores. Your first solo firewood run, your first time holding the pig still for slaughter, your first time staying up all night to keep a sick lamb warm. You remember each moment, not because they were joyous, because they were proof you're still here. One odd tradition you've grown used to is the annual blessing of the tools. The priest comes and flicks water onto ploughs and hammers and buckets while muttering incantations. You watch from a distance, eyes half closed, wondering if he ever blesses people that way. Just flicks water and fixes the cracks. That would be nice. Scholars love to argue about whether medieval children were really children in the way we think of it now. Were they allowed to play, to imagine, to grow slowly into themselves? Some argue yes, pointing to toys, dolls, little shoes. Others argue no, childhood ended the moment you could lift a bucket. Based on your knees and the way you haven't had an unbroken night's sleep in months, you're leaning toward no. But still, there are flashes, moments where you almost remember what it was like to not carry the weight of survival. When the frost forms perfect spirals on the window and you trace them with your finger. When the pond freezes over and the surface looks like a sky you could fall into. When someone tells a story around the fire and you laugh until your side aches, not because it's funny, but because it's ridiculous. You dream of things sometimes. Not glory, not adventure, just quiet. A place with no smell of smoke, a bed without straw poking through. A day when no one calls your name because something's gone wrong. Even now you don't expect comfort. You just want relief. For your fingers to stop cracking in the cold, for your stomach to feel full, for your family to go 1 month without someone getting a fever. You want to walk barefoot without worrying about worms. You want to lie down without wondering what you'll wake up to, or if you'll wake up. And despite it all, you keep going. You wake, you work, you carry water and scrape pots and shake lice from your shirt and stare down the sun like you're daring it to give you one good reason to stop trying. The fact that you've made it this far means something. Not to the world, not to the lord of the manor or the priest or anyone writing history books, but to you. You survived being a child in the Middle Ages, and statistically, you probably shouldn't have. So here you are, at the end of it. Not just the end of a story, but the end of a long, strange, often filthy, occasionally hilarious journey through what would have been your actual daily life if you'd been unlucky enough to be born about 900 years ago. You've made it. Sort of. Let's not pretend you thrived. You were half-starved, constantly cold, possibly illiterate, spiritually confused, missing a few teeth and covered in a layer of mud so permanent it probably had opinions of its own. But hey, against all odds and rats, you made it to 12. That alone makes you a statistical anomaly and, depending on your point of view, either extremely impressive or very unlucky. The Middle Ages were not a fairy tale. Not for you, not for anyone. Sure, there were castles and dragons in stories, but the reality was turnips, tooth rot, fleas, and wondering if that cough your sister has is going to be the end of everything. Childhood wasn't a time of play and imagination. It was a boot camp for poverty. You didn't have the luxury of finding yourself. You just tried to stay alive long enough to become someone other people relied on, or married off, or buried before midsummer. But in between all the misery, and let's be honest, there was a lot, there were sparks. The warmth of a fire shared with your family after a long, bitter day. The stolen laughter between chores. The first time you caught a fish on your own, or made someone laugh until they wheezed. Even the weird little customs, dancing with goat masks, blessing shovels, singing to the moon. These moments didn't make life easy, but they gave it texture. They made it yours. And now, as you drift off under your very modern blanket, in your very climate-controlled room, possibly full of snacks and absolutely full of Wi-Fi, you can rest easy knowing one thing. You definitely wouldn't have survived as a child in the Middle Ages, but you did survive the telling of it. So sweet dreams, time traveller. Don't let the plague bugs bite.